Muted. Okay. Now we shouldn't be muted. Hopefully the internet is fine. It says it's unstable, but I don't know. It was doing fine earlier. Let me close these. Close this. How's it going, everybody? Can you hear me good? I'm trying to make sure because it's been a minute since I've done the live thing, so not sure if you can hear me. I have slides. That's the reason why I was late. I was setting up slides to talk about houses because I didn't want to have my face on the screen the whole time, especially if the network can be kind of spotty during these things. But yeah, so, okay, slides should be good. So how's it going, everybody? Back live. It's been a minute. It's been a minute since I have been live. And I'm just going to talk HHN tonight. It's going to keep it casual, keep it chill, and talk opinions, unpopular opinions, popular opinions, my opinions, your opinions, everything of that nature. So we're going to talk about the event and everything like that. So I'm going to see. We are live now, and not expecting a huge turnout for the live tonight, but you never know. I just wanted to go live and just kind of chat with you all because it's been a minute and I'm in between videos, so I didn't want it to give you all something. I didn't want it to be nothing happening. How's it going, Chemo Dog? Welcome to the stream. Great seeing you in here. Always a great time seeing you in here. Yeah, we are in October. It's October 19th, so we're almost out of HHN season, which is kind of sad, but you know, it is what it is. It's kind of the way these things go. If it was all year round, well, I guess it would be Horror Unleashed in Vegas, right? But yeah, so we're almost done with the season. Yep, I remember it was yesterday when we dissected Spec Map 1. That's right. And don't worry, next year we're gonna be all on it too. I don't want to talk too much about next year in this stream. It'll probably come up, but I want to save this stream more for this year and what my thoughts are this year. And it was mostly because A, I wanted to stream. I haven't streamed since the Ghostbusters announcement. B, I wanted to have a place where I could kind of throw out all my thoughts because I have so many thoughts about this year's event, and I want to talk about it with you all. Or even if no one shows up to the stream, even if it's just you, Chemo Dog, then we can talk about it. We can just discuss everything because it's just I have so many thoughts and I need an outlet. I wanted to do a full video, and I might still do a full video from beginning of the event, like not even beginning of the event, like beginning of announcements through the weird announcement season we got, through the construction season, through all the controversy surrounding this year. What are people thinking? Is it a budget year? Is it a bad year? Is it a good year? All that stuff. It's been something that's crossed my mind about making a video, but I also was like, I think a stream would be fun doing that. So yeah, we're just here hanging out Saturday night. Don't do streams on Saturday night. But I also typically Friday nights at this point, I'm at HHN for the most part. So if you're at HHN on a Friday, I'm most likely there. Most likely. But yeah, we're going to talk about houses, scare zones, put my updated rankings. Y'all can put your rankings in the chat. Once I want to talk about overall event thoughts and overall stuff, scare zones, extras, food, everything on that. And then jump to houses and then jump to rankings. I feel like that's the best way to flow it because there are a lot of overall thoughts I have on this year's event that I think are interesting, to say the least. Okay. Never apologize to you on behalf of the West Coast for our Hollywood offerings. Hollywood, I feel like, has been an interesting one this year because I know y'all obviously have more IPs than we do. We have 2 more IPs. And from what I've seen, because I have watched videos of everything, next year I'm really trying to make it out there. Like I know I say that every year. I'm like, oh, I got to make it out there next year. But like next year, I think, especially considering what they have, because 2023, I regretted not going because of like Chucky and the Better Last of Us house, and trying to remember, Terror Tram looked pretty cool. Monstros, the first one, and arguably the better of the two versions, all in 2023, and I didn't go. And this year, I don't feel terribly bad that I missed out, but I also am like, I do want to check out that event because I've heard nothing but good things from the people that have been that I know, but also like I know y'all would probably love to see my first reactions to Hollywood, considering how much I talk about Orlando. And I tried to talk more about Hollywood this year too, in my build up, and I did kind of lose it a little bit because, you know, just everything got crazy. That's what happened with the streams too. They kind of slowed down because everything got crazy with construction and trying to get out to there to do videos every week to do construction updates. And then the build up, food announcement, all the house announcements, scare zones. So, and then of course, once the event started. So that's why it's been a minute between streams. But yeah, I'm happy to be back streaming. What's going on, Arkham? Good to see you again as well. This is good to be back. Is this fun? It's a fun thing to stream. Like I said, a lot of people fainted when Weekend was announced. I like what they did with that house. Like, I'm curious. That's one of those that I'm very curious how Orlando would have done it. Like, had Orlando also had the Weekend IP, how would they have created that house? Would it have been the same, or not the same, but like, would it have been very close? Because I know a lot of those Hollywood houses this year are very similar to Orlando in terms of the structure. Like Ghostbusters, A Quiet Place. Insidious is a little different, but I really think Ghostbusters and A Quiet Place are pretty much beat for beat exactly the same scenes that we have in Orlando, versus, you know, obviously they're different, executed in different ways because they're in different locations, and it's different teams. But yeah, I think that it would have been interesting to see. I will agree that Weekend facade is contender for facade of the year, Halloween Horror Nights in general. In terms of just the energy it brings and the music, and then having to swap out when the different Ables come on the stage. I think it's like such a cool idea, and I really like that they went with that route, in really doing a show-stopping facade. I like the facade that Hollywood did for the last one, the record that opens up and you go into it. I think that's cool. I think it's cool for the Weekend. I wish we got a more formal facade, because yes, we had the entrance scene where it was him on the electric chair and everything like that, but it wasn't like a real facade. So yeah, that's just my take. Definitely Weekend facade is the best one in Hollywood for sure. And maybe across both coasts, just because of how dynamic it was. But anyway, yeah, let's just jump right into the event since we're already kind of talking HHN. The event at large. So everything. I hope that y'all who are in here have checked out my video that I put out, the my review, like best and worst video, because I'm going to be referring to that video, but not as much, like, because my opinions have changed since I made that video on a lot of things. The one thing that I will say though that hasn't changed, that is very strong, and I think has even become more true as I've experienced the event more in the houses, is that I think the consistency of the houses in terms of being all pretty solid, I still believe that. I was, coming in at that point, like not really loving a couple of the houses and being like, oh, they're just fine. But really, the more runs I've gotten in those houses, I have been getting better. They've been getting better for me a lot. They've grown on me a lot. I will say other years, like 2022, 2023, those are my years of experience. Those years, especially last year, I will say really last year, felt like they had higher highs, but I do think they also had lower lows, personally. I think this year is a pretty solid all the way through, like a solid 7 or 8 when it comes to how out of 10. 7 or 8 out of 10 if you were to combine all the houses together. There are a couple houses that I think are phenomenal and really, really shining stars of this event. There are a couple that I think are good but not great, and then there are a couple that I think are just all right. They're good. They're just not. They're not on that level for one reason or another. And I think that's like the biggest praise that I can give this event to this point. I think the houses, if you were to take the houses alone for this year, I would see it being a very solid year. And I do think it's a solid year in most places. I think the atmosphere is, I think, the biggest downside for this year is the atmosphere. It, not that it feels different, because it still feels like HHN, but also there's so many dead spots. And I know a lot of folks have noticed this from the past couple years, but with no roaming horde, front scare zones, pretty much nothing. Most areas aren't really being used for Horror Nights, especially when you go to the back. When you go to the back of the park, there is pretty much nothing happening back there except a couple house entrances. And most of the action's in the front, which is typical. Like New York area, yeah, it's busy there. You got a bunch of big houses, especially when it comes to the IPs. Most of those big IP, I mean, pretty much all the big IPs are all right next to each other. And then you also have a couple, the scare zone there, and then the tribute store and food. So it's like all up there always. But I feel like especially in the back this year, it's like you go back there and sometimes it's a ghost town, like especially over by like ET area. Now, granted, they shut it down this year because of DreamWorks, but it still has that where it just feels like a ghost town. Where you go back there and you're like, especially after like midnight, there's no one back there. There's not a soul back there. And there are a couple food booths back there, and those I feel like fall off after a couple hours. So I think that there are places where it works, and especially a little nitpick too, is something I do want to say, and I don't know if anybody else has noticed this. I think the lighting is a real problem this year, in my opinion. I'm all for different ideas with lighting, and I know they're trying to do the pink and blue colors for Sinister and Surreal all across the park, and you see that, and there are places where that absolutely works. On the public library, on the Men in Black building, all that is great. But when you have that lighting where it just doesn't yes, it's themed lighting, but it also just doesn't illuminate the area. There are areas that feel dark, and not in a way that you want for Horror Nights of like, oh, there's characters, it's supposed to be dark and spooky. No, it's just areas that just feel dark because it feels like you're at a park that's not open. That's the kind of vibe that I'm getting from this year. And I see those pockets, and it is kind of disappointing, especially when, tickets keep going up for this event. Like, it's not getting any cheaper. And it's not saying that I think this is a bad year. This is not a year. I don't think it's a terrible year, especially compared to years in the past. Especially 10, 12 years ago, like that time period, like those middle between 20 and 25, some of those years were kind of iffy like this one. But I think that this year in recent years is the first one that I feel like we're really filling those pockets again. And I think that's just kind of upsetting, in my opinion. Just in my opinion, some of it comes down to a lot of nitpicks that most people won't pick up on. And I don't even hate the scare zones. I really do like a couple of the scare zones this year in terms of I genuinely enjoy them. I genuinely enjoy, I'd say, 3 of the scare zones this year more than pretty much all the scare zones last year. But, and I'm gonna go back to this comment. These 2 comments, John saying disjointed theming is an issue. Houses are great. This is exactly how I feel. That's the biggest problem for me with Horror Nights, Halloween Horror Nights 33, is the theming is just not there. And we'll talk about that more when I talk about the icons and stuff and that whole thing. But the theming just doesn't feel like it's on the same level as it has been in previous years, especially coming back off of 2 very heavily themed years. Really 31 especially. 31 being, I think, one of the best years when it comes to theming in recent memory. And I'm happy that was the year I decided to go, because that year's theme was so strong, but it was also so identifiable. You can go into that event, not know anything about Horror Nights and how the event works, and be like, oh, it's Halloween, pumpkins, witches, scarecrows, ghosts and goblins and ghouls and candy and all that kind of stuff. The stuff you would typically associate with the holiday. And I think that's the nostalgic part about that makes it oh man, that's such a fun event. That's why it's still my favorite event that I've been to, because overall event, because of that theming that extended into the houses, into the zones, into the tribute store, into the merch and the food. That whole thing was the whole package is what I appreciated about that year's event. Last year we had Dr. Oddfellow, which as an icon, I think was cool. There were some holes, I think, in his story that I think could have been worked out a little more, but overall having him in the park was fun. He tied into the zones. He had his own house. He tied into some of the other houses with some Easter eggs and little nods to kind of tie everything together. And you don't have to tie everything together, but I think it'll help your year feel, I think it'll make it feel better in the long run, because you look at a year like 31, you look at a year like 2019 or 29, I guess I should say, that like had so much theming in terms of the 80s thing extended into the hordes, into some of the zones, into the houses, into the merch, into the food, into the music. It all felt like a pieces of a puzzle that are coming together to create a whole ambiance and experience. And this year I'm getting, there are a couple things going on over here. Like we have our kind of punk theme on the merch and the tribute store kind of deal. We have our sinister and surreal, like kind of cosmic icon, whatever theme over here with the zones and the icons. And then we have the houses, which are kind of just a hodgepodge of like, we have some fan favorites with like Slaughter Cinema, Monstros, Major Sweets, you know, these things. And then we have, you know, IPs that are all kind of all over the place. And IPs, I don't expect them to kind of force it together because they're IPs and they're usually third party and whatever. But like that's the kind of disconnection that I'm like, wait, there's like 3 or 4 things happening here at once that it feels disjointed. And I think that's just overall the biggest thing that I think is unavoidable when looking at this year and looking at it all like listed down. I really do like the houses. I do. And I think the zones are fun. I think some of the pieces are fun if they just maybe connected them a little better. Maybe they went for the full punk, you know, like 90, like whatever, like the punk theme they went with the merch. If they went with that for the whole event, let's say incorporate that into the music, and say incorporate that into some of the zones. Let's say incorporate that into a house more. I guess we have Heavy Metal Hell and Slaughter Cinema, but that's one room in an original Sprungton house. You know, it's not like a premiere house. Like if Heavy Metal Hell got its own house, and it could be like, oh, it's kind of the thematic house of the year. You know, like that's my biggest gripe with it in terms of the theming. And we can talk about that more. I know we have some chats here. There's a huge difference between Orlando's and Hollywood's in terms of overall quality. Now, I do see where you're coming from with this. I think I will say, and it might feel just because Hollywood is a smaller park and it's a lot more intimate. But from what I've seen, I feel like the atmosphere in Hollywood, it's always great. But I think especially this year with those scare zones in the front and the upper lot, it feels better. Like it feels more connected. You have the chainsaw punks, which I think is an effective way to tie into that merch. And I'm shocked we didn't do anything like that here, where chainsaw punks, it looks like a fun zone, but it also doesn't look like a super complex zone. It's chainsaw punks with fun leather jackets, fun outfits, masks. It's not like crazy set detail, but I think it does a great job in tying into the merch. You have the Skull Lords, which I think is another cool thing, and how it works with the punks. I think it's fun. And that little area always seems to be like there's a lot of action going on there. Then you have the Crows at the end of the street. And then the French Street, you have the Luchadors. You have all those things going on in fairly close proximity. And I think it really does a lot to welcome you in a way that feels exciting. And it's like, oh, hell yeah, Horror Nights, I'm here. You know, and again, they do this very often with Hollywood. Like I've noticed in recent years, especially, they've really made an effort to like kind of have it be you coming in and you know it's Horror Nights. You got chainsaws going, you got fire towers. It's very active. And for me, in Orlando, with Duality of Fear being the first thing you see when you walk in the park, it feels very sleepy. And that's nothing against those characters in Duality of Fear. They're doing great with what they have. But I think there's just not a lot of meat to chew off of. If you're a scare actor, you're just a chainsaw roaming around. There's nowhere for you to hide. You're just kind of chasing people up and down the street with chainsaws in a kind of dimly lit street. That's the biggest disappointment. But Duality of Fear, we'll get there when we talk about zones specifically. But let's see. Yeah, so like icon is if you overarching if you dig deep enough. Like I remember when I put the video out, a lot of folks were like, "Oh, thank you." Like it made me actually understand the icons, and it's like there really isn't much to understand. They didn't give them much lore, and I think that's like a big misstep, because sometimes they overdo it with the lore, I think, to where it becomes complicated. Like I think as cool as like something like Bloody Mary is, or Lady Luck, I think sometimes maybe they overdo, or Storyteller, they may sometimes overdo it a little bit with too much lore, to where it's kind of like, whoa, like, you know, it's kind of all over the place. But I think they should have added a little more lore, maybe given them a house. Do like kind of like what they did with Oddfellow. Give him a house, have him be in the zones, but give him the house so you can explain what they are. Because people that are coming in that have never been before, they're like, okay, who are these people? You know, who are these characters? I feel like the stuff that works with general public is stuff that can be kind of sold easy. Like it can be presented in a way that's very simple and like a quick elevator pitch. Hey, Bigfoot Yetis roaming around. Okay. Hey, creepy carnival. Okay. Cheesy B movies, like B horror movies, like the purposely bad horror movies. Okay. I feel like that's something that like it's something that's easy to understand. You don't have to do too much lore digging, and that's not trying to be like gatekeeping, like, oh, I know, like I have the superiority. It's just, for me, yeah, that sounds interesting. If it's a concept that sounds interesting, versus like you have to do digging through podcasts and understand the whole story to go into a house, and you're like, wait, and especially if you don't get all the scares, you're missing out on so much, and you're like, what the hell just happened? That's how I feel about one of the houses this year, that it's very story heavy, and the story doesn't fully connect most of the time. But anyway, so yeah, talking about the punk thing, yeah, I know they print merch for both coasts, but I just wish, I think it's something that like, it's not, I don't think it's everyone's cup of tea, but I do think a lot of people have started to kind of like, I think a lot of people would have dug it if they would have went for it. I just wish they would have just gone for it. And even if it wasn't popular, at least they went for it, and it was kind of a unique thing that maybe in years to come, people look back on it and go, man, the punk thing was kind of cool. Like that was kind of a cool choice, or it was a bad choice, but at least they tried. Sinister and Surreal felt very, very risk-free. They are big characters, but they don't go all the way with them. I feel like the times you get close to those characters doing something interesting or saying something interesting, it kind of just goes back into typical HHN fare. And that can be something talked about the event in general and what they've kind of done with that stuff. But I do think that they did drop the ball just a bit with the characters, to where I don't think they're living up to the potential that they could. I want these characters to be cool, and we want to see them come back, like Dr. Oddfellow. Like I want to see characters that we want to see return. And I don't know how many folks are clamoring for Sinister and Surreal to return anytime soon. So if they did have the icon, I mean, for me, it's that guy from Slaughter Cinema. It's the heavy metal hell rocker dude, because that guy is on the house shirt. He's on all the merch, pretty much. That skeleton punk with the leather jacket and the mohawk. He's in the bar. He's like, I think he's one of the most memorable characters from this year. When I think of original characters this year, I'm thinking of Major Sweets, but I guess Major Sweets wasn't from this year originally. It was from the Scare Zone. Thinking of the Goblins from Goblin's Feast, and I'm thinking of that guy. And the Jesters too from Slaughter Cinema. I mean, pretty much most of Slaughter Cinema, but that guy is the heavy metal hell character is everywhere. And even that style, even if it's not that same character, that kind of feel, the punk rocker skeletons that are kind of like neon style. Taffy is fun. I like what they did with Taffy, although, yeah, I like what they did with Taffy. I don't really have any outstanding criticisms or complaints or anything about Taffy. I think he's cool. I think he does exactly what he's supposed to do in those. He kind of reminds me of a cartoon like villain, like a cartoon like big scary guy, and that's kind of the vibe of Major Sweets. It's kind of like a cartoon haunted house. So a rock star from hell, yeah, I think that would have been really cool. And I think Heavy Metal Hell is one of those that I do think that one will become a house. of some kind. Maybe they connect it to like the Darkest Deal and like a similar kind of situation, because it does feel very Darkest Deal-esque, right? The music and hell connection and how it's like, you know, maybe if they wanted to make that, or they can do it something completely different, like what you're saying. I think it's a really cool pitch, and I think it could be really different in the lineup of icons. Going back to Sinister and Surreal, I think Surreal as a character is a lot more interesting than Sinister is, right? Yeah, Surreal. Yeah, I gotta remember to not get them confused, because Surreal is tapping into a different fear. And I think that's what's interesting about her, and that she's not just doing the same thing that most other icons are doing, which is blood, guts, and gore. And that's what Sinister is doing. But that's also what Jack does. That's what Chance does. That's what the Caretaker does. That's what the director does, so on and so forth. There's so many icons that are so gore, blood, extreme, that Surreal, being someone who's like, I'm going to like get into your head and play with your deepest fears of like that are actual like real fears that everybody has about themselves and how they're perceived and all that stuff, I think is so interesting. And I almost wish she got the year and it was just her year, and they just really like focus on morphing that character rather than them trying to hodgepodge the two together, because it's 33 and they need like a dual thing, two icons instead of one. It's kind of what I worried about with doing this, in that, I feel like I worry one will get the shine over the other, and that did happen, at least in my opinion. But yeah, I think they could have done different things with the icons, but these are the icons we have. I don't hate them. Sounds like I'm dogging on them a lot. I love the designs. I love the designs of both of them, and I do like their presence, and I feel like the presence does a very similar thing that you got with Oddfellow last year, where when you get one of those interactions, it's still, for me at least, it's still cool. Like when you even though the characters aren't my favorite, like if you get a cool interaction with Surreal, which I have gotten, it's a fun moment. So I don't completely hate them, but anyway, I feel like now's a good time to talk about houses. I feel like we've talked a lot about. I guess we can talk about zones. We'll talk about zones first, and then we can talk about houses. We can always come back to stuff, but zones. Talking about the icons and talking about how the zones work with the icons. There are the two. So Duality of Fear is nothing. It's basically a horde at the front, and a horde at the front with the sign that recently hasn't been working. I don't know if it's like just because it's old, it's an old prop. It's been around for a minute. And then also with all the weather we've been having here, hurricanes, rainstorms, all kinds of stuff. A good chunk of the time it's been off, or it's just not been working. I don't know if they need to like take it to a shop or like get it worked on or whatever, or if it's just time to retire it until 35 or whatever. I know it's kind of become like an iconic part of the event now, even though it was gone for so many years, and then they brought it back in 30, and then everybody's like, oh, we love the sign. Like, bring back the sign every year. And I think my favorite time they did with the sign was 31, where they put the pumpkins on it, which I thought was genius. And I wish they would do something like that again, maybe putting some like some vine, like dark vines, or like whatever, kind of the stuff that they do with the zones, like maybe some dark vines that glow different colors or whatever. Anyway, yeah, that's my thing. I just feel like Duality of Fear, definitely, even as far as entrance zones go, because my expectations were pretty low because it's an entrance zone, right? It's not a full-scale scare zone. And I know that because of the minions and the minion land being what it is, it's been kind of weird getting the whole thing together, getting the whole scare zone together. And I really wish we could go back to using that area. I liked it last year because they had the problem. But if you have minions, plus you have this wicked store that's coming at the end of the street that they need that whole plaza for, you are left with not really much space to work with. And my biggest thing is, like, why didn't we put up stuff in the street, like on the side? Like, because they had, for Oddfellow, they had the stage, and then they had the crates on the side, like along the side, kind of like a place so you could have characters hide. And I think that's the biggest thing. And it's why I kind of feel for the chainsaw folks, because like, yes, the chainsaws are going to be scary regardless. Like for a lot of people, I don't really like the chainsaws. Nothing against them. I just don't like chainsaws. The sound, because I do have like sensitive hearing. I always have to wear earplugs in houses because they're just so damn loud. But there's just not a lot of things for them to play with. I feel like when you add more sets, you can have more fun as a scare actor. I don't know if any of you guys have been scare actors or at any haunts outside, not even just HHN, but you know, just giving you more room to act and to do your thing. I kind of wish we got to see that, but Duality of Fear is kind of like a blip. Honestly, it's an entrance zone. It's got the fun. I like how they're. I will say I like how they're handling the icons in the zone, because we don't have shows there, and because their shows are in their own zones. We see them come out. Like they're there early in the night and then they go away into their zones and then they come back at the end of the night to like wish you farewell, which I think is cool. I like that idea. And I like that they're using that platform for the icons, where last year with Oddfellow, he walked up there for opening ceremony and then you never saw him up there again. Yeah, they could have had something. It could have been something there. And I think that's another drop the ball moment. I think that's definitely the most disappointing scare zone. In terms of like the other scare zones, I can enjoy, or I can see where people might enjoy them. This one, I'm like, unless you're like a chainsaw maniac and you love the chainsaws and you're, you know, someone who loves the hordes, you're kind of getting a horde here. That's more of what I would consider this, as a horde. But as a scare zone that you're putting on an advertisement saying we have 5 scare zones, I'm not buying it. Sorry. But let's move to more positive things. I've been kind of negative for the past like I don't know, 20 minutes. I want to talk more about positive. Let's jump over to Torture Fair. Really like Torture Fair. Torture Fair is a lot of fun. I love all the character designs in there. I like the music a lot. And I don't know if that's some of that's like original music or just music that's not available on like streaming, because I've been trying to find, like, I want to listen to the music. I love the music of Torture Fair. I want to get the playlist, but I haven't been able to find it. But whatever. Maybe I'll sit and I'll Shazam every song on like closing night or something. I'll like sit there and I'll like, okay, let me get all the playlists together. But yeah, no, I really like Torture Fair. I like the lighting. I like the vibe there. They do these festival gone wrong. That's kind of what I've been calling it. I don't know if it's got like a more formal name, but like with Sweet Revenge, they did it. With Vamp, they did it. With Torture Fair, they did it. The Vamp, the last, 85 and 69, they did it. And Psychoscarapy, it's not a festival, but it was like the Halloween party. So they've done it for many, many years, that style of scare zone. And New York, it always works. It works to a degree. I like this more than I like the Vamp, because I think there's a little more variety in the costumes and the interactions. I feel like I'm having more fun with the interactions this year. You have Pickles with the bull. You have the knight's armor and the person working in the merch kiosk. And then you have just all the characters roaming around. All the torture devices I think are fun. And of course the big stage with not surreal, Sinister, King, Queen, Executioner. And then when they do tongue cuttings and stuff like that, it feels very cool. It's a very cool scare zone. And I feel like it is different enough from what they've done before. It feels different enough from what they've done before to add to it. Now, going back to what we were talking about icons, this is a zone that I don't think is an icon zone, because I feel like you can take Sinister out of the zone and it wouldn't really change much. She's cool when she's there and when she's on the stage, and you can feel the hype in the audience, but like it's not the big draw for me. I think the sets and the characters and the premise carries itself. It's another easily explainable, to people that have never been to Horror Nights before, and you say, what's this scare zone about? It's a Ren Fair gone wrong. Oh, okay. Like medieval torture devices in a Ren Fair. Oh, that's fun. I feel like that's why this scare zone works. And the Sinister thing is cool when it's there, but it's not going to make or break the zone. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Torture Fair. I'm having a fun time with it. I experience a lot because I'm in New York for houses, especially when we get to the houses, and some of the ones that I've done the most have been in the New York area. So yeah, but I want to go through chat because we have a few chats here. Holly Ever After, welcome to the stream. Well, wearing ear protection in houses is smart. We've done it for years. It clarifies the sound. Yeah, and I notice a lot of the mixing this year is kind of rough. Like the mixing, the sound mixing, especially in Slaughter Cinema, it's pretty bad in terms of like you are hearing sounds from 3 rooms ahead of you, or you're hearing sounds in the entrance of the house that again are from like 3, 4, 5 rooms ahead, and they're all coming together. You have music, you have all like chainsaw noises, you have like blood like squelching, all of that is going on at the same time. And I feel like a lot of the houses are like that. I will say Insidious, one of my biggest praises of that house is that the audio mixing is so good to where there's enough isolation between scares, score, and sound effects, like triggers, and then actual sound effects that are just there in the setting, that I feel like each room has its own sound. You don't feel like you're getting overlap, and there's no leaking, I guess I should say. And I like that. I like that idea. Anyway, we'll talk about that when we talk about houses. But yeah, I wear the earplugs all the time. I used to wear AirPods, and then I had an incident. Y'all, opening night where I almost I did. I lost an AirPod in a house, and I luckily was able to get a replacement. But it was crazy. It was a crazy experience. So don't wear AirPods in the house anymore. Not because if you wear them, totally all on you. Headphones with music, yeah, totally do it up. But I've started to move towards let me just wear earplugs instead, because they do the same thing, and I don't have to worry. Like if it falls out, I'm not worried about I have to buy another thing. Get a pack of earplugs for like $2-3. So yeah, what's going on, Backlog Builder? Welcome in. Strong opinions on Hollywood. We'll talk about that when we talk about houses, because I think there's some interesting comparisons from some of the IPs. Feels good to have intense violence, referring to Torture Fair. Yeah, that's what I love about this too. And I didn't talk about that, but I do like that it's very visceral in the zone. I know some of the props are reused, like some of the body props and stuff like that. Like I know the Blood Eagle has been used before. I want to say in the Viking Zone, and I also feel like I remember that being in Hellblock Horror too. But either way, it's great to see that stuff just out in the zone. It's fun, but it's not funny. It's not too lighthearted to where you're not going to get scared in there. I've gotten scared a couple times in the Torture Fair zone, and it's not like Vamp, where I feel like Vamps is a little more lighthearted versus this one, which is a little more heavy. Makes me hopeful about the possibility of Terrifier. Listen, that movie is making bank. And I think Horror Nights is going to want to get on Terrifier soon, because it's going to start to get expensive. I feel like I need water for a second. No, but I think Terrifier is going to get, if they make a 4th, 5th movie, whatever. This movie, I mean, Terrifier 2 is what really put art on the map. I feel like for outside of the horror fans, because yes, people who have been watching since what do you call it? All Hallows Eve, and then the first one, yes, but Terrifier 2 is really what did it. Terrifier 3, I think, is what's solidifying it, especially with it being one of the only horror movie releases this Halloween season, which is kind of crazy. I mean, Smile 2 just came out. I haven't seen it, but Smile 2, Salem's Lot, but that's not in theaters. So there's not a lot of movies coming out this year compared to previous years. So with that, giving Terrifier spotlight, and you go to a Spirit Halloween, Spencer's, Hot Topic, any of those stores, you're seeing tons of Art the Clown merchandise. So yeah, I think it'll be a strong thing for Universal to maybe go for next year, maybe go for maybe the year after next. 35 maybe, we don't know, but yeah, Terrifier would be a good pick. Okay, 4th has already been greenlit. I didn't know. I'm not. I will say, I've said this before in previous streams. Never been a huge Terrifier movie fan. I like Art the Clown, the character, not a huge Terrifier fan, if that makes sense. Of the films, just because it's just for me, it's just not my kind of horror movies. I know people that love them, and more power to you. If you enjoy it, yeah. I like gore, but I'm not a gore hound. Am I the only one who doesn't want Terrifier? I'm kind of 50-50 on it. Yeah, I'm gonna say my thoughts more for when we get to next season. And my like when I do my first video of the year of like what do I want to see at the event. We'll talk about that when we get there more. My thoughts on Terrifier, because I kind of talked about it last year. But yeah, I'm kind of 50-50 on it. So I guess talking about horror movies and popular horror franchises, let's go over to Blumhouse, the Blumhouse zone. I think this one's okay. I think it's an okay zone. It does most of what you would expect it to do. When you think of Blumhouse zone, you're thinking, okay, Purge, Megan, a Black Phone. What else is in there? Freaky and Happy Death Day. I think those are the 5 franchises that are in there. No FNAF. That's a whole nother situation, and I never expected FNAF to be in the zone, but I like what we get. I like what we got in Blumhouse. I think the characters are fun. I think it's fun photo ops. I do think the San Francisco thing is still a problem, especially this year because you have these, overcrowding with Megan, and they put her right at the front of the zone and the grabber too, really. Both of them on the same stage in the front of the zone, which I think is, I get why, because it's like a good attractor to get you to go through the zone, but also I kind of wish they maybe would have put grabber on the other side, because that other stage, which has, I want to say his name's Elijah from one of the Purge films, from I think the first Purge, the construction worker Purger. He's on one side, and then the Butcher from Freaky's on the other side. Not really characters people are going out of their way to take pictures with. But maybe if you would have spread it out, I think it would have been cool maybe to put the grabber and Butcher on the same stage because they shared a house back in 2022. I think that would have been cool, but whatever. But yeah, Megan is crazy. I mean, the zone gets very overcrowded because it's Blumhouse. It's kind of like photo op zone. You got the Purge, you got Megan, you got very popular franchises, and Sweets unloads, or I guess exits, not a ride, exits into the zone. So it's all over the place. Even though I will say it's not like there are a lot of set pieces to like, oh, I got to dodge around it. But yeah, Yeah, it would be torture to walk around with a FNAF. Exactly. This is what I said before the event started, that not only is it I think not feasible for actors, but I also think it's just such a liability because how people get at horror nights. With that being so easily accessed to touch and to get close to, it would just be a nightmare. They would have to keep that out of the way. And plus weather. Weather is, maneuvering one of those suits if it starts raining, which it rains all the time, especially this season has been probably one of the, I feel like, the consistently rainiest seasons in a while, where between 2 hurricanes and for a while it was storms every single night. For like the first 3 weeks of the event, it was every single night it was raining. It's like, yeah, that's not very feasible in terms of a zone. I would love to see if they, obviously house, I think will be the perfect format for this. Zone, not at all. I don't think it would work in a zone. Makes me wonder if the reason for the zone is because of Hollywood's tram. I think they're kind of both in the same realm, because it definitely just feels like, hey, we got these Blumhouse characters and we know people want to see them, so let's just do a Blumhouse zone. But I feel like next year it would have worked better because you have big Blumhouse releases next year. Megan 2 is coming next year. FNAF 2 is coming next year. Black Phone 2 is coming next year. The Wolfman is coming next year, which not even talk about the Wolfman. That's a whole nother situation. But yeah, so I think that is something that I'm like, why not do that next year instead of this year? But yeah, so we'll have to see. But yeah, I do like the Blumhouse zone. I think it's fun. I do think they're having fun with it. I can see some of these characters, and for me, the biggest thing that I want, the biggest takeaway of this zone is I feel like maybe it's just me because I haven't seen it, and I'm still relatively new to the Horror Nights experience. I would like to see another Purge zone, like a full Purge zone. That's what it made me want, because the Purgers are my favorite part of that zone. Whether it's the dude with the bull horns, Lady Liberty, what's that, Betsy Ross from Electioneer. So many Purgers I think are so much fun, and they have the whole Purge moment where they have the siren go off and all of them like put their hands in the air. Like, that's cool. And it made me feel like, why didn't we just do a Purge zone in the first place? Or maybe we're waiting for the next movie to come out, and maybe we do then a full Purge zone with every character. I know they've done it on the Terror Tram to death, but in Orlando, it's been like 7 years since we've seen a Purge zone. Best case scenario, FNAF is like Werewolf. Yeah. They've definitely an animatronic, which they've been doing a lot of animatronics recently, both Orlando and Hollywood. So, yeah. Well, don't spoil the ranking. We got to wait for the video. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the houses. Maybe rankings or not. They've been changing. So, like, even if I were to talk about them in the stream, they will change. They've changed every single time I've gone. Like, and not just, oh, maybe this one moves up. Like, no, some of them have drastically risen and some of them have drastically fell in rankings. And a few of them, once we get to talk about the houses, you might be able to tell which ones I like more and which ones I'm disliking a little more. Not disliking, but not liking as much. Horrors of Blumhouse Volume 4. Yeah, I could see them doing that. I think Megan needs a house. I think it's time to give Megan a house. Considering talking about that Terror Tram and what they did on the Terror Tram, basically giving Megan a mini house outside where you have these scenes that are literally like, yep, that would be in the house, that would be in the house, that would be in the house. You're in the toy factory, yep. You're in the warehouse, yep. You're here. I think if they did that and then added more to it, like fill that in, put that in Fast and Furious, perfect, boom. No, with major suites this year, my faith has been restored in Fast and Furious. If they go the route they went with major suites, I think so. But I think that could be a good Fast and Furious house because that queue has a lot of capacity too. And they've done it before. I mean, they did the other Horde Blumhouse there. But anyway, again, not trying to talk about next year. Need a proper Purge house. Yeah, another one I want to see. I haven't been since September, early September. Has the lack of characters in Eternal Bloodlines improved? Yes. At least in my experience. I think that it's funny because I in my video I was like, yeah, I haven't gotten any good runs in here, and then literally after I put that video out, I started getting good runs like every time. So it's like, and I've been through the house almost 10 times, almost 10 runs, and most of those runs have been good and have been staffed. So I think that one's one that definitely has improved. Same thing with Monstros. I've seen more characters in there than I have before. But yeah, with some of Megan's movements, we'd go puppet or animatronic. Honestly, I would just go, for the most part, I would go animatronic for some, but just do scare actors. Because the way Megan moves, it's kind of that uncanny valley of like, she's almost human, right? Like the face, yes, it's kind of like it looks like artificial, like CG, but it's like, she also looks like she moves almost like a human would. So it's like, I think you can do it just like they do on the Terror Tram, where they have her kind of do more stiff movements, but it's still scare actors doing it. But maybe you could have a couple cool, fun puppet or animatronic scares. I think it will work better than like trying to put people in Chucky suits, which they did, and it didn't really work as well as when they went full animatronic puppet route. Okay, scare zones. Where are we at now? Blumhouse. Swamp of the Undead. I'm really liking that one. That one, it's growing on me a lot, I will say. It is growing on me so much, and I'm having a lot of fun with Swamp. I feel like it's kind of like murky. It's like a murky like atmosphere. It reminds me a little bit of what they did with Scarecrow, like kind of the vibe of Scarecrow, not as much jungle. And I like that this year it feels more open. And that's mostly with, I think, a good chunk of the set pieces being more on the sides, and like with the giant treehouse being off to the side, it feels like you can move around in there unless it's like a fully slam night. But even so, I haven't really had a whole lot of trouble maneuvering like I did with jungle last year. And maybe that's because the crowds aren't there as much as last year, and that's a whole other thing for debate. But yeah, I'm really liking what they did with Swamp. Swamp, and then Demon Queens. Demon Queens is really cool. That, though, I would consider to be an icon zone, because when Surreal is not there, you feel that. You feel the lack of the character. And when she is there, it's the full package. I love it when she's there and she's doing Let Me Inside Your Fragile Mind, and people are screaming, running around. The characters in here, I will say, outside of Surreal, are like working overtime in terms of blending into the set pieces, following you around, like staring like deep into your soul. Like it's very unnerving, and I like that. It doesn't just feel like the same kind of scares you're going to get in Torture Fair, which are very like, hey, I'm here. I'm going to jump in your face and you're going to get scared. Nothing against that. That's got its place. But I like that there's a variety of that. Yes, you do have those kind of scares, but you also have more intense psychological scares, which works with the zone. Put my phone in. So yeah, I'm really liking those zones. Swamp, Torture Fair, and Demon Queens. I'm really loving all three of those. And Blumhouse is all right. It has its moments. Sometimes I'm really liking, and I think it's fun. Others, I just want to get the hell out of there. It's very good. I've tossed it between Swamp and Torture for number one. Yeah. I'm feeling very similarly. Like, honestly, any of the scare zones could be number one by the end. Any one of those three, I should say. Duality of Fear is pretty firmly at the bottom, and then Blumhouse is just above that in terms of it's just okay. But yeah, Demon Queens. Demon Queens is the black sheep. Yeah, I kind of do feel like that. I do feel like Demon Queens is kind of an underrated zone. I feel like it's kind of underappreciated in a way. To really see what's going on, because I think there's a lot of cool stuff happening there. And I know a lot of folks were like, this scare zone's going to be, it's going to be lame. It's going to be thrown together. It's going to be, not fully there. Set pieces came like a week before the event started. And I think that zone, for what they did, I like it more than I liked Dark Zodiac last year. And I feel like Dark Zodiac was too much. I feel like they were trying to do, it felt very hollow. It felt like they had the idea and it was a really cool premise and they didn't really do much with it. Demon Queens feel like something that does catch you off guard. And you're like, oh, what's this? Demon Queens? Oh, what is this about? And then when you go in there, you're like, oh, wow, that's actually really cool. Blumhouse gave me a biggest scare in a scare zone because I forgot it was a scare zone. I've gotten some pretty good scares in Blumhouse, especially with some of the purgers. Ironically enough, I've gotten some good scares, honestly, in pretty much every scare zone. Demon Queens, Torture Fair, Blumhouse, not as much Swamp, but it has happened in Swamp before. So yeah, I think in scaring you and actually scaring you, I've had that in every single scare zone. And I think, like I said, I think the way they're designed are a little better than last year in terms of flow. Blumhouse is busy, but like obviously if you go on a not sold out night, but like a very busy night, yes, all the zones are going to be packed. But like, even if you kind of roam around at off times, you can have those fun experiences with the zones. So yeah, I think the zones are pretty decent this year. Pretty good. Real quick, I guess I could talk about the food. The food and the merch this year. Merch, honestly, I'm waiting until the sales happen. For those who know, sales are starting on merch. So if you haven't picked up any merch yet, there's that like 30% off now. I believe next week they'll be 50, and then they'll probably go more. I'm still looking to get an Insidious shirt. I haven't gotten an Insidious shirt yet, and I need to get an Insidious shirt because I am enjoying that house quite a bit. But yeah, the merch is fun. Not enough Quiet Place merch. Yeah, that might be a third-party thing. It might be a Paramount thing, but the shirt they have, I love with not the clicker. That's the other one. With the Death Angel on the front and then the like tagline on the back, the gray shirt. I love that shirt. That's another one I'm waiting to see if I can get it on sale. Lots of Ghostbusters stuff, and I love Ghostbusters, so of course that's a problem for me. A good amount of Insidious stuff. I wish there was more original stuff in terms of like they have the original shirt and they have the major suites, but like Slaughter Cinema, that's like seems like a slam dunk. That could have been a slam dunk in terms of merchandise, but whatever. But yeah, Merch is fun. I'm gonna get a few more things. I've only gotten a couple things so far, like a couple shirts that I've just worn around, like the house shirt. I want to make sure I get the one stuff I always try to get. But I haven't really gone crazy on the merch, mostly because I'm waiting for it to go on sale. Hoping for a souvenir glass. I know that's kind of a weird one. They only have 2 glasses this year, and it's for Ghostbusters and Insidious, which I get one every year. I have gotten one every year. I might get the Ghostbusters one, but I might also, the Insidious one is also interesting. I like the design on it. Speaking of food, how about the characters at the bar? I actually really like the HHN bar. I think I don't think it's like, I think it was maybe at least my opinion, maybe my expectation was too high on it in terms of like, oh man, they're gonna bring out so many characters and they're gonna roam around and there's gonna be so many. It wasn't on that level, but what we did get was fun. You got Miss Treats there. You got the Heavy Metal Hell characters. You have Goblins and a couple of the Monstros, which I think is cool. Again, good way to meet characters you're never going to be able to take pictures of in the houses. I think it's really fun. I think it's been fairly successful. I think it could be something I could see them bringing it back next year for sure, because it's not something they would need to like with Peacock. I feel like they maybe had to do some licensing deals with that or something, even though it is Universal, like setting it up and stuff. But I think with this, they can just kind of do whatever they want with it. I mean, there have been points where they put some of the swamp characters out there. If there's like, hey, we don't have Miss Treats right now. Okay, let's throw a Swampy up there in a bar. That's fine. And I've read that recently at the end of the night, those characters roam around the front zone, which is like, why don't we just have them roaming around all the time? Why don't we just have those characters, right? A couple Goblins, Heavy Metal Hell, Monstros, and Major Sweets. Have them roam around the front scare zone and have that be like, fill out that zone with characters to be like, hey, look, Duality of Fear. Everything's supposed to be sinister and surreal, right? So we have some of the characters from the houses, kind of like what they did with Altars of Horror back in 2017, where they had characters from the houses in the zone. But whatever. They're starting to do that now. But, it is what it is. We have a Blumhouse. Oh, Blumhouse glass. I keep forgetting about the Blumhouse glass. I like the Blumhouse glass. The Blumhouse merch. I think it's neat. But yeah. I again, might be something I pick up if it's like dirt cheap. If not, maybe the glass thing is a. I have to be like, I have to get it at the right time, so I don't worry about breaking it. I've said this before. We've talked about this in the stream before. I don't want to break glasses. But yeah, I usually wait until like the last week of the event, when everything's like 70% off, to go hard and just like spend like $100 and buy the whole store. Not the whole store, but like, all the stuff I want. I heard the Wolfman spot for the upcoming. Yes. So, well, I don't know about the reason why. Been theories everywhere. It was the backlash to the zone. As someone who was there, I was there. Wait, do I have the video? Hold on. I was there when they did it. The one day they actually debuted the Wolfman in the zone. And I made a point to stick around in the zone. Can I? No, that's not. Hold on. See if I can find my video that I have from. Oh, is it not going to work? Oh, no, maybe it's because it's the wrong format. Oh, that sucks. I do have video. I put it in the videos or something. I do have pictures and video of me with the Wolfman because I waited for it. And I got to see him. And that was the one day he was out. And then he just never showed up again. And I was like, well, once in a lifetime meet and greet, I guess, unless they bring him back at some point. Once in a lifetime meet and greet for this year. I feel as though this year was the first year I didn't go crazy with merchandise and food. I won't say I went crazy with food, but I did try a lot more this year than I did last year. And I have a list I've been keeping of all the food and all the rankings. Maybe I do that at the end of the season where I go through every item and I rate it. I talk about my ratings. My favorite things, honestly, some of the mocktails have been great. The Ghostbusters mocktail was awesome. I just got that, I think, last week. The Insidious mocktail I got opening night, wonderful. I like the Red Door, the little treat, the little pie they have at the Insidious booth. I like that. And then what else? The pinchos, like the skewer, the chicken skewer from Monstros. That was awesome. The tres leches cake from Monstros was also a good dessert. And then, what else? The burger from Triplets. Those are just a few of my highlight items. I will say I haven't gotten anything mind-blowing this year that like, oh man, this is my favorite thing. Like there was no Yeti poutine this year. There was no Hellfire Club this year, you know? And I kind of wish they went back to making more, I don't want to say regular food, but like there's so many items like the Ghostbusters items that are so weird. And they're like, I feel like they're kind of meant to be like a very odd, like the Slimer corn dog, which I think is like the worst item I've gotten this year. And then the other one, the Death Chill, which I just got yesterday. It was, I don't even know how I feel about that one. Like that one was like, it was so weird. And like, there's been some good ones, but I don't think there have been any like crazy food items that I've just loved that I've wanted to get again. I guess I should say the pinchos were probably the best food item I've gotten, but it's basically just grilled chicken tenders with sauce. Like it doesn't like, I could get that in, you know, I can get a grilled chicken sandwich at Richter's if I really want grilled chicken at Horror Nights, or I can go to one of the restaurants. And that's what I've been doing recently. Is I've been like, if I go to the park for Horror Nights, I've been just going to Minions or going to Springfield or wherever, just getting regular food, and that's what I've been doing. Stranger Things and Last of Us are strong IPs. I wanted everything. I'm okay with Insidious and love Ghostbusters. Yeah, I think that's the thing is that like, if you're excited for Ghostbusters and Insidious and Quiet Place, buy everything up. But if not, like, it's not the same, I think, fanfare this year. Like, Ghostbusters has so much merchandise, but, like, a lot of it is pretty much in that same, the two designs, the design that's, like, the key art, which is really cool. I like that design. And then the retro, like, style with, like, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and Slimer. It's, like, those two. Like, if you... And everything is a variation of those two designs. So if you don't really love those designs, that's all they got for you. But they do have a lot of other Ghostbusters merch, like in the park from summer. They brought a lot of new Ghostbusters merch in. There's no shortage of Ghostbusters merchandise at Universal nowadays. Wolfman, yeah. I don't know. That was just a weird one. I don't know, like, because it speaks to me like. I don't know if that was the sole reason why, but because it also, like, think about it like this. We're at the end of October, right? The event's almost over. We just got a trailer with a look at the Wolfman. And that was not even really a look. Like, not as much of a look as we got with the character. So there's also something of, like, maybe they were like, they spoiled it, and they're like, hey, take that out. You know, because even the Hollywood version looked better than ours, in my opinion. I think the Hollywood one they did have on the Terratram for that employee preview night looked like a better costume than ours. But I don't think we'll ever find out, or it'll be something that years in the future we're like, oh, that's what happened. You know, Yuri's peanut butter cup. I can't eat peanuts, so I can't. But what I've heard though, a lot of folks really like that one. Walking Taco. I did have a little bit of that one. It's pretty good. Yeah. The Slaughter Cinema booth, I think, has had some highlights this year in terms of like items that people are really digging, like the dog, the hot dog, and then this, and then the also for the drink is pretty good too. So yeah, there have been a few items from a few of the food booths. There just hasn't been anything for me that's been like, I need to get this again. Makes me hopeful for, man, I would love a Ghostbusters attraction, ride, show, whatever. Walk through, I don't care. Like, I want an experience of Ghostbusters. And the reason why is because I love Ghostbusters Frozen and Empire of the Haunted House. So let's talk about haunted houses, because we're an hour into the stream, and we're going to probably spend some time on the houses. All right, let's talk about the show first. Nightmare Fuel. It's Nightmare Fuel. It does some interesting things with the new format with the circus, the new story this time around. Some fun tricks, but I feel like it's definitely like, if you like it, you like it. If you haven't seen it, you'll probably like it. But if you don't like it, I don't think it's going to really change it for you. For me, I wish there was just another show or shows, like 2 or 3 more shows. Like, I really think 2 more shows, in addition to Nightmare Fuel, 3 shows at the event, would be solid. But yeah, let's talk about houses, because that's, I know what everybody wants to hear about, houses. And let's talk about Insidious. I mean, like, come on. Hold on. Talk about Insidious first. I want to make sure, because I had to do slides for this. Let's talk about Insidious. Okay. This is the house of the year in terms of like popular. Everybody seems to love Insidious. I got a lot of flack for where I put it on my list. And I will say I'm liking it more than I did when I made that video. I think Insidious, for fans of the series, I think you're going to eat it up. Even if you're not a fan of the series, I think there's a lot to love here. I like how they put you in the perspective of one of the characters going into the further. You walk up, it says, into the further you go. You now go outside, like, let my voice be your guide. Like it seems like you're being like in that hypnotic trance. And that's really cool, because it's a lot like you're not watching the movies happen. It's happening to you, which is so genius in terms of like this world. And this is exactly what I wanted to see out of this house. Nothing against the characters in the movie, Dalton and Josh and Quinn and all the other characters who have been involved with the series. But I just don't care as much as like, put me in the further. And it makes sense that they're coming after me, because that's how they are in the movies. They're coming after the people who are journeying into the further. Also, I'm going to talk about spoilers. I'm just going to say this. I mean, it's almost the end of the event. I know there are people that may have not gone yet, but they're going to be spoilers. I'm going to talk full on about houses. So just want to say that. But the build up, the facade, the first couple rooms, really up until the bride scene. And the bride scenes, I mean, Bride in Black is the scariest character to me, because in the movies, the bride is so scary, but also in the house, the bride is so imposing. And like, the thing about Insidious, and everybody has said this, they get up in your face. They're not messing around. There's no like, sensitivity scare. No, they're getting up and like freaking throwing their hands in your face and like all kinds of stuff. And that's what I love about this house. I love when the actors can bring that energy and can bring that surprise where they do interesting things. And this red-faced demon, does a lot of that in this house. I think from the middle section does kind of do a little bit of a dip in terms of, I also don't love the third and fourth movie. And it's like, if you love those movies, then maybe you'll really be like, oh, Keyface. Yeah. Like, Man, You Can't Breathe. Yeah. They have great moments, but I think it really picks up again once you get into that curtain hallway to the end. That curtain hallway gives me anxiety. And it did with Unmasked last year, but it wasn't as long. Here, when I see that curtain hallway come up, I start to like get that anxiety of like, oh shit, I know something's coming, and it's just like from there to the end is just boom, boom, boom on a good run. You're getting scared. However, with this house, the one thing that I will say about this house is that this is scare house, all scares. So I think it doesn't work as well as a house like Exorcist Believer, in my opinion, in terms of the house Exorcist Believer used the sets to design the scares. The scares worked with the scenery. Here, it's the scares are number one, and the sets come second. And you do have some cool sets in here, but it can feel predictable, where you kind of can know there are scenes that are very inventive. I'm not going to take that away. Like I said, the bride scene, that's probably my favorite scene of the house. From when the bride is introduced to the like hallway where they have the mirrors and all the photographs and stuff, like that is terrifying, because you don't really know what's happening. But I can see folks going through the red curtain hallway going, okay, it's a curtain, they're going to pop out. And that doesn't scare me as much. But I will say the intensity, the action, the characters, I think it does. And again, honestly, before last night, I probably would have said this house was still like near the bottom of my list. Last night, I had 2 great runs of this house, and I was like, wow, this is what I've been wanting. I've been wanting these runs. And this is a must-do house. Like, I'm not even going to say, even though I don't put it near like the top of my list, and I've been pretty clear about this, it's not my favorite house of the year, it's a must-see. If you're coming to the event, it is one of those houses that will be talked about. It will be talked about. It will be fondly remembered, especially by those who didn't do the house back in 25. And I think that's the biggest praise I can give for Insidious. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on Insidious. I know a lot of folks have thoughts on this. I know there's some stuff in the chat. I'm going to jump right in. Insidious, the house where everyone's faces went white after experiencing it. Yeah. I know for me, I've been with people and we're walking up and they're like, "Oh, this one's actually going to be scary." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I've been telling you the whole time." Insidious, it does that to you. It does look like the most intense house, but I think you really have to love the movies to enjoy this house. Now, yes and no, in my opinion, because like I think the movies are good, not great. Especially even that first one. I think the movies are good, not great. I like the world of the Insidious and the further. And if you like that part of the movie, you're gonna love this. And that's why I think I'm like, oh, I love this. If it had been here's Dalton and Josh roaming around, and it's more based on that, kind of like the Hollywood version does a little more of that, that's where you lose me. I'm like, okay, that's why I'm like, all right, I don't care about these characters as much. I want to see demons. I want them to come out in my face, like get in my face, get crazy. That's what I'm there for. I'm there to get the scares. And I will say this house does do what Exorcist did in terms of like, you get nervous a little bit as you're walking up to it. Like when you're in line, you're like I don't get nervous with houses. I can go in houses pretty easy, regardless of what house it is. But it does that. Insidious does that to me, which is very admirable. Even though I haven't been going for that many years, I still have that like pretty stone-faced, I'm not stone-faced, but I'm not scared going into haunted houses. Is Insidious an IP original? Like I wouldn't say IP original because it does stick very close to those movies. Like you go into the scenes, you're like, oh, yep, I remember that one. Yep, I remember that one. I remember that one. But it does something different with it, almost in a way, kind of like The Exorcist, the first Exorcist did. Like kind of like what Believer did too. Kind of like what TCM does in Hollywood, where it's like it's taking stuff but it's flipping it. I would say TCM is more like an IP original than this is, in my opinion. So I wouldn't go that far because a lot of it is very checklist. Like, hey, this is in the movie. Oh, yep, I remember that scene. Yep. I don't like that. There's a guy that pukes on you. I just want to say, I don't know what the puke thing is this year. They're doing a lot of the puking in the houses in here and Hollywood. I'm getting puked on a lot and spit on and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, I don't. And I know in Hollywood it's worse because you got it in TCM, you got it in Slimer. Slimer does it to you. You got it in Insidious. I don't know what the puke thing is. So yeah. So I don't know what that deal is. We'll talk about that when we talk about Slaughter Cinema because that's almost worse. But yeah, even though it's like just water, I just don't want to be puked on. Like there's no reason for this. And the way they do it in Insidious is like, unless you know it's there, you're getting puked on because it's like it's above you. I know in Hollywood it kind of comes out from the side, but like in Orlando, it's above your head, and everyone's getting sprayed like the whole time. Let's talk about curtain hallway. Think about the curtain hallway, how claustrophobic. Yes, it feels claustrophobic, and that's where my anxiety comes from. It's not necessarily about the characters, but it's because of how tight it is, and because of how hard they go in there, to where they are like popping out or sticking their hand out or whatever. That's what I'm like. No. If you didn't care about the family part, I don't think you would have liked it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I feel like the Hollywood version leans more on that, and I think it's cool, but that's not my favorite part of the movie. And I think I would rather you spend more time with the demons than with the family because the demons are what's scary, in my opinion. Of course, I keep saying that, but it's like, yeah, that's my take. The smells in Hollywood were horrible. I was lightheaded in TCM and Insidious. Yeah, that's what I've heard. The Hollywood smells like they went hard. Like here, we have a bad smell in Monstros, but it really isn't that terrible. like comparatively to like a bad smell, like especially from what I've heard from Hollywood. Monstros has a smell. It's like Triplets has a smell too, or it did. Candy, Major Sweets Candy Factory has a smell. It smells like candy. There are a couple houses. A museum has a smell. That has a smell, but it's like a nice smell. It smells like The Darkest Deal. And maybe it's just because it's in the same tent. Maybe it's like, oh, we have residue from last year. Yeah, Hollywood has a reputation for the smell. Well, that was the thing. I was expecting in Monstros for them to go hard on the smells because that's what they did in Hollywood. But I guess it's just because like Orlando doesn't really do it that much. Like, yes, we do smells, but it's mostly good smells, or like it'll be a couple smells. Like it won't be a whole where you're just like, oh, it's just bad smell after bad smell in every house. We don't really do that here. There's usually like one bad smell, and it's usually like a like poop smell. And that was like Insidious last year, and Monstros has that this year. But that's about it. It's like a manufactured like feces smell. Yeah, fish smell in the museum. Yes. It kind of smells like Demon's Pier. Yeah, they really in museum. They went kind of hard in there with the smell, like from there, and then in the wallpaper hallway. From there to the end, it smells like dirt, like outside, like kind of manufactured dirt smell, like The Darkest Deal did. That's yeah. TCM with sewage, feces, blood, and old. Oh, that's a great combo. That's an award-winning combo of smells. Yeah, and like John Murdy, like being like, yeah, we're gonna make the worst smelling house you've ever been to. Golly, why? Like why? I know it's part of the thing, but. I guess that's why they keep telling y'all to keep moving in the lines, right? Even in the butcher shop scene, yeah. But you know what house doesn't have a smell? Which I want it to have a smell? Ghostbusters. There's no smell in Ghostbusters. But let's talk about Ghostbusters. This house, I'm just gonna spoil this here. Sorry. This is my favorite house of the event. It was Slaughter. I just said Slaughter Cinema in the video. Ghostbusters, I think, is my favorite house of this year's event because, man, they pulled out all the stops. Everything that you think they could do in this house, they did. And they nailed it. Every single scene. There's so much going on, and every scene has multiple actors happening, like multiple actors, multiple triggers, animatronics or like puppets. It's so well done in that if I were to sit here and break down every single scene of this house, we would be here for another 3 hours. But I really love how fun this house is, but it also does deliver some scares. The ghost containment unit, where you go into that hallway and it's like a dark hallway, and you got 4 scares in there. If everybody's there, 4 scares. You got Terror Dog. You got the, from what I understand, his name is Scary Ghost, the guy with the big teeth. You have Garaka, and you have the library ghost, all in like a very small hallway. It's just mind-boggling what they do with this house and how they pay tribute to the originals with so many cameos and legacy characters, as well as they follow the beats of Frozen Empire. And I know Hollywood does it very similarly. And I really would have wanted to see how Hollywood did their version, because their version also looked fun. I know you're saying marshmallow smell in Hollywood. I'm jealous. I wish we would. I know for the 2019 house had marshmallow smell. They have a marshmallow candle, right? Is that marshmallow? I think it's like a marshmallow smelling candle that I do want to pick up. But that is a merch item I want, because I want to be able to smell that and remember the house. But yeah, I'm really liking it. I'm digging Ghostbusters a lot. I think it is an IP house that I'm going to remember from this year. And yeah, I think the fans that I know, a lot of folks were like, this house is going to suck, or this house is going to be boring, or not going to be scary. I think they really nailed it. I know folks that don't love it, and that's okay. And it's okay if you don't even like it. But I think you can't deny the effort. It felt like they really spared no expense when putting together the house. Scenic effects, scares, costumes. I feel like they did so much with it. And it's what I wish Stranger Things did last year. It's what I wanted to see out of Stranger Things, where there's scenes in Stranger Things that kind of felt cheap. That felt like, okay, yeah, the budget kind of ran a little thin here. Maybe we need to put more, maybe like put like a giant, backdrop. Okay. And not again, like, again, I didn't dislike Stranger Things, but like Ghostbusters, the scene, like they have a giant firehouse that has projections on it. Like a full scale firehouse that has projections on it. They have the mini puffs guys that are all around the room. They have an Ecto-1 that comes through the wall. Same thing with Hollywood. Hollywood has this too. That's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like they went for it. It's fun. Yeah, fun based on a movie people don't love. I think I know Kimodog says movie was so-so, but the house was awesome. Yeah, house was so much better than the movie, in my opinion. And this is someone who liked the movie. Adding Easter eggs to previous films. Yes. The fact that I got to see Vigo the Carpathian in this house, this really just, it was just icing on the cake. It was icing on the cake. I love it. Any other characters like Terror Dog, Library Ghost, Slimer, although Slimer has been replaced. That is very, it's sad, but I think it's still fun. It's not the worst. I feel like it could have been a lot worse how they did it. How big was the scene with Garak? All the videos. So I'm guessing you're talking about the finale with Phoebe's on one side. I can't remember his name, but Kumail Nanjiani character was on the other side, the Fire Master, and they were like going at it at the same time. So it is a very big scale scene. That's a scene, like it looks like an empty room, but it really is a big scale scene because that's the same scene you have the Ecto-1, you have Ghostbusters, and it's like a big scene you kind of maneuver through. With the firehouse, because that also has Garaka there. That's also very big scale. Like Garaka is big. Like Garaka is a big actor. Like it's a tall character. And with that scene at the end, he doesn't really come out. Like you don't really get that close to him. It's more of a show moment than an actual scare. They do kind of like I have gotten scared by Kumail Nanjiani before. He did come like, oh, hey, like I wasn't expecting you to be coming up in my face. But like the actual Garaka actor was not meant to be a scare. It's more just to be like, whoa, that's a big epic finale. How are the mini puffs in Orlando? They're fun. They're everywhere. They're everywhere, and it's kind of similar to Hollywood. I mean, I think they may have had like the same batch, and then they were like, here, we'll pick a couple here. They're mostly in the mini puffs. There's one fun one in the sewer in the pink slime, which is really cool. But they're mostly in the Razor Cold books, the research facility, and then the firehouse. But they're really fun. They're really fun to spot, especially the ones that move. But I also like they have like projections of them. Like, oh, they got a TV of them running around. I'm like, oh, that's fun. The food items. I thought you were talking about the actual. No, but the food item was all right. It was a s'more, and it was very big. I will say, it was I'd say like this big of a s'more, and it's like the marshmallow is thick. It's like it's pretty substantial. It's a good one you could split with maybe two people, for me at least, or eat the whole thing yourself. Not bad. But yeah, that's funny. I think we are talking about the actual guys, the little guys, which they're great too. Slimer, unfortunately, there's a situation with the costume that maybe it was a safety. I'm guessing it was a safety issue with this character. And it was replaced, I want to say like a couple weeks ago. And it's now, they took because the costume was like a morph suit, like I think a morph suit with the slime, like the Slimer body is like one piece, and then they have these giant gloves that go down to about here that are like the arms. And what they did was they just popped the arms on the thing and made it like move around. And now he like waves around. And then when he gets zapped, it's like there's a little spin, like a little spin thing. So yeah, it's not ideal, but if it means that there's this character that's not going through pain with a costume, I'm all for it. Last minute thoughts on Ghostbusters. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on this one because I can. It's very easy to. And we have 8 more houses to talk about. But we can move on if ready to move on to the next house. But yeah, if anybody's got any last minute Ghostbusters. Did Orlando's have the brothers from 2? No, they did not have the Scoleri brothers. Hollywood has them, but Orlando does not. But I want to say, are there characters that Orlando doesn't have? Orlando has that Hollywood doesn't? I don't think so, because Hollywood's got Vigo. Vigo actually does a scare, though, in Orlando versus Hollywood, where he's just in the scrim. It's cool. Vigo, I love Vigo every single time. I don't think that the, quote, scary ghost, that the teeth ghost, I don't think the teeth ghost is there in Hollywood. The librarian's not in Hollywood. I feel like I've seen the librarian, like the library ghost. Maybe I'm missing it. Maybe it's a different ghost, but I love how they do it in Orlando, because they actually have her like going by, and speaking of, shouldn't talk about A Quiet Place. All right. Let's drop that. Quiet Place. Honestly, I don't have much to say about this one, which is fitting. Not that it's bad. I do enjoy it. Quiet Place is the ultimate, I think, scenic house other than Ghostbusters. I think Ghostbusters does scenic and scares. This one does, ooh, look at that. That's what it does for me in Orlando in terms of the sets, the animatronics, the puppets, the boat, like going out into the boathouse and seeing the boat on the water, and it looks like you're outside because it's like all blacked out. Really cool. I love the first room. So I really like how they set up the introduction of this house. You go into like the shop, like the general store that they go in the first movie. Go into the store, and then you go into this pitch black hallway that only lights up when the scare happens. And that hallway, that might be the scariest hallway of the year, not because it's scary, but because I cannot see. And that's where for those who have been here since I talked about the AirPod, that's where the AirPod fell out, in that hallway. It was the Quiet Place. It was the last house of the night on opening night. Quiet Place. And that hallway, and then you go in the house and it says A Quiet Place. That's really cool. I think that whole setup is awesome. I love when houses do those like title cards, like they did it with Halloween. They did it with Stranger Things in the first 2. They didn't do it with the third one, which I'm kind of bummed about. But I love when they do those like huge title cards of like whatever the IP is, because it feels like you're setting up like the title of the movie, and that's kind of how the movie starts, where you have the opening scene and then it hits the boom, Quiet Place. I think it really nails that part. I know there's some comments here about the Chupacabras meets Descendants of Destruction. That's kind of exactly what you get here. I will say, obviously, the sets here are a lot more natural. They feel like real places that you're going, which I think is cool. But I do think it is. I do think I get this vibe, like the Chupacabra thing, especially because a lot of the scares feel very similar. There are a couple though that are actual like puppet heads that pop out. There's one that's like a head and like a body, and it like swoops up, and that is really awesome. But yeah, this one I think not really scary, other than that first room, which isn't more of the scare, it's just more of the fear of not being able to see. But I went through this house last night again, and it had been a minute since I'd been through the house, and I really I like it. I like it, maybe not as much as I did when I first went through it, but I do enjoy it. Orlando's scenery looks better. Hollywood's creatures are superior. I'd have to probably agree with you. I like a mixture, because I like how some of our creatures are done, but I also like how some of Hollywood's creatures are done. Like, they do the full scale ones really well, in terms of like, we only have one full scale Death Angel puppet, or animatronic, I guess, because it's just I will say it's more of just like a static figure, and the head kind of like twitches and turns, and little skin, I don't know what it is, like skin, like radar ears, I don't know, whatever the little things kind of pop out. And that's about it. But like, I know like y'all have some crazy animatronics over there. And I'm like, that I think you have, it really works that way. Yeah, Zombie Chris, hard agree. Bring some of the stuff from Hollywood, some of the animatronics from Hollywood, some of the scenes from Hollywood, I think are done better in terms of like a little more, they're a little tighter. I think this house has the same thing that comes with The Last of Us. With The Last of Us, those scenes felt big, but they also felt like they were kind of far, like you were kind of far from the characters. So you weren't getting those scares as much because it felt like the scenes were almost too big. That's kind of how I felt with Last of Us. And I feel a very similar way to A Quiet Place, where some of the let's read in the chat. Some of the scenes in Hollywood felt a little tighter, and I think because of that, you have a little more scare factor. But yeah, definitely. Thank you, Zombie Chris, coming in from Howl-O-Scream, watching the stream. That's awesome, man. Hope you enjoy Howl-O-Scream. Hopefully, I get a good report about that event. No offense, but Hollywood has pushed with their animatronics. I mean, animatronics are amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think they've been cooking with the animatronics recently. Between La Lechuza, the Death Angels, Chucky, all these examples you listed have been great. Even like, I kind of like, is El Cadejo, is that an animatronic or is that a puppet in Monstros 2? Is it? I'm not sure, honestly. But either way, I think they've been really doing great with animatronics. I really like that they're doing that. And yeah, I mean, we'll talk about La Lechuza when we talk about Monstros. Okay, it's a puppet. All right. Either way, I think that they've been really doing well with the full-scale animatronic. I mean, La Lechuza alone is such a dynamic figure. Seeing it in person from Monstros in Orlando, I can attest that figure is so impressive. And it's so big, because you get really close up to it in Monstros in Orlando. In terms of silence, have they delivered a promise? Yeah. On my runs, I've experienced that it hasn't really been. I don't think it's as interactive as we were hoping it would be. Because I've been with people who have talked, and it doesn't like impact your experience. It doesn't like change how the experience flows. It is cool. I like how I noticed this on my last run through, some of the ASL being more prominent, which I know in Hollywood that's much more of a bigger deal than in ours. And it's an inverse of Insidious, where with Insidious, I didn't really care about the family aspect. I didn't really care about the human characters. With here, I like the human characters, and I wanted to see more of them. And I kind of wish we get to see more of them like involved together, not together, but like just more of them involved in general. Yeah. I feel like I was in front of a Death Angel many times in that house. Yeah. I feel like that close quarters, working in Hollywood, working overtime, you get the big, I think that location was I think ultimately the best choice for that house, because you can get close, but you can also get big. Like you can have the house facade that's kind of like the one we have, but it's not like ours. We don't have the full one because we have the Quiet Place title, but y'all have the same house facade, like where you go past the house and the light bulbs, which is neat. Also, Quiet Place has good food too. Chris, everybody loves Chris. But a baby bird, that's the one I kept forgetting. That one too, from the Scare Zone. Yeah, definitely. Like that one would have been. That one's another great shining example. Also, Zombie Chris, make sure to hit the thumbs up. It would really help the stream out and get more eyes on it. Although I don't really, that stuff I don't really care about with these streams. I'm more here to have fun. But anyway, thank you, Chris. Wish it was more interactive, creating a chain reaction. This is what I was kind of hoping for. And I did kind of feel this. Maybe it's a timing thing, because quiet or not, you have that thing of like, I think her name's Reagan, the daughter from the movie. She'll come out, she'll do something. The Death Angel will come out and do something. Or one of my favorite scenes, and there's no Death Angel in the actual scene, but it's where the boy gets bit, or not bit. He gets his leg caught on the bear trap, and he like kind of squeals. Mom comes out with a shotgun, pops the Death Angel up here, and it's like 1, 2, 3. You kind of like watch it happen. Or the scene in the boiler room. Mom comes out with the baby cries, and then the Death Angel comes out. And it's like you're watching it happen. But I don't think it matters whether you're quiet or not, because from what it meant, what it sounded to me was that if you were to like make a sound, it would impact that movement. But it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, because you're going to see that anyway, or you're not going to see it. It's either you see it or you don't. So, and that depends on how, obviously, your run-throughs. I feel like Hollywood's is a lot more traditional in terms of like, it feels a lot more like a haunted house from Halloween Horror Nights. Yeah, more timer-based rather. Yeah, this is exactly what I was saying. More timer-based, more like just kind of the where you are. I heard Hollywood has a lot of noises despite being in a soundstage. I can't attest to this because this is not Hollywood. I do like that Orlando did do this in their own soundstage and not in a shared soundstage. But, either way. Q videos. So yes, please bring back the Q videos. Enjoy the Hollywood had a Q video, April. Bring back Q videos. Yeah, please. Like, I would love to see Q videos. I would have loved if Major Suites got a Q video, considering there are TVs in that queue that are not on. And Chucky had a Q video. And I get it's an IP, so maybe that has to do with it versus Major Suites. But even like just a little like B-roll clip, like they do with Slaughter Cinema. That's what I will say. Slaughter Cinema, they went for it with the trailers and stuff. Would have liked a slow build up like the film. Yeah, I see that. I feel the same way in terms of like, I feel like we get that with Orlando. With Hollywood, you're kind of just thrown right into it. With Orlando, you have that build up and you have that first scene that I'm talking about, which I really do love that build up in that scene. I think build up, like even outside of a facade, like even if you don't have a facade, if you have a strong build up, you solidify that atmosphere early. It does wonders for your house. Hollywood's in the same spot as Evil Dead Rise, and it's impressive. Yeah. It's impressive what they can do when they just knock down walls and like don't use the same formula year after year, and they actually try to do something different with it. And I hope whatever they bring next year, that they put a big IP there or an original maybe, and they utilize that space, because Hollywood doesn't really run with sound stages like we do in Orlando. Okay. I think now's a good time. We can talk about Quiet Place can roll over into the next one, but I think it's now time to talk about our final IP, one that I know I have a lot of thoughts on. Universal Monsters Eternal Bloodlines. Now, I will say this was my number 10 house, and I would say it's probably still my number 10 house. But with this house, and I talked about it a little bit before. Maybe some of y'all weren't in here when I mentioned this before. I know Arkham. I want to say Arkham maybe asked, or no, maybe it was John from earlier. Asked about characters and like, have they added more characters in Eternal Bloodlines versus when the event first started? Yes. Every run, I'm getting a lot more characters that I just straight up didn't see. But I think it's overcomplicated. I think there are too many characters, and I think that a lot of this setup is just odd. What they do with Saskia Van Helsing, what they do with Bride in Orlando, compared to Hollywood. I like what they did with Bride in Hollywood. It felt more like a continuation of Bride of Frankenstein Lives, but also in Orlando, it feels a lot like she has to take a minute to get back to that place that she was at the end. Like Bride of Frankenstein Lives, by the end, she's a badass. She is completely, utterly battle mode. And here it takes a minute for her to get back to that. But Dracula's Daughter, I don't really care. Like, I just don't like, I'm not invested. And the other monsters, I feel like, are kind of sidelined to where sometimes you just won't see them. And it's not, and I'm gonna say this, great idea, bad execution. I don't think this has anything to do with the team, with these characters, with the I don't think that's what this is. I don't think that's why I'm upset with this house. And it doesn't have to do anything. I know people I gotta make this known. This doesn't have to do anything with the fact that it is a all-female house, all-female led house, female run house, all these characters. In Hollywood, they kind of throw this off and add a couple of male characters at the end, which I don't know what the choice was there, considering that how they're presenting this house, but that's a whole nother thing. What I'm talking about here is that I just think this house there's too much happening. I think there are too many cooks in the kitchen here, and because of also the location of this house does have a sort of restriction in terms of what they can do. You get those big sets that are Universal Monster a couple times. You get the Dracula's the Manor. You get that like a really big scale there. You get the caravan scene, which is my favorite scene between the caravan itself and the she-wolf bungee and Saskia coming out with the crossbow. That whole moment is phenomenal. I love those scenes. And I'm liking this house more than I did before, I will say. But I do feel the lack of something. Maybe it's just the monsters are kind of running their course. Maybe that's what it is. Honestly, it could be that factor that this is year 5 for Orlando and 6 for Hollywood of consecutive Universal Monsters houses. And while I love the monsters, I know you all probably love the monsters. We're getting monsters at Epic. We're getting more monster stuff. I feel like we're getting so much monsters, and it's maybe starting to get a little oversaturated at HHN. When there are a couple monsters, there's one in particular, a certain creature that we haven't seen yet. And I understand there are a lot of problems with bringing that thing to life, and we've talked about this before, but it does feel like that void of like are we kind of just retreading old ground? Because this definitely feels like if you took Bride, you took Legends Collide, and you took the story of Saskia Van Helsing, and you just kind of said, let's just put it all together. And I think it does kind of feel derivative in that way. But let's see what y'all think about it. I know there's a lot of thoughts about this. So divided on this. What a disappointment. Hollywood's was worse. I've been through it a dozen times. There's some runs 2, 3. That's rough. I know that they've had some, especially been pretty bad with staffing that house in Hollywood, from what I've heard. I'm even on how much Bloodlines tells such a funny story, unironically. Yeah, it's just a weird, like the story is very weird of how it goes. Arkham, I was gonna do it. I was gonna say it if you say it again. I put a spoiler warning out there for folks who have not seen the house or the thing, but everybody in the chat, if y'all are cool with the total story spoiler, we could talk about that ending. But yeah, Bride of Frankenstein was a female-led house and it was fine. Yeah, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. I don't think that's not where my criticism's coming from. Not at all, because I wanted this house to be great. Same thing with it's the story of a house like Spirits of the Coven as well. It's like I wanted that to be great, and there are things that are outside of that factor, but I just wanted to address that, and I don't want to spend too much time dwelling on that concept, because I want to talk more about the house and what the story is and the characters rather than the situation outside of Halloween Horror Nights, the connections, whatever. I don't really want to talk about that here as much. Let's talk more about the houses. Frankenstein is much more useful putting down. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, well, Victoria Frankenstein, but also Bride. The fact that she was able to completely wrangle all the brides of Dracula and use their blood to bring back Frankenstein, right? That was Bride of Frankenstein Lives. Felt like more of a thing versus Saskia, who doesn't really get much to do here. She does, but she also doesn't. Hollywood's technically was better. I think for me, from what I've seen, I feel like they do different things better. Yeah. The one thing I'm weird about Hollywood is why was that a soundstage house? It almost felt like it was meant to be a tent house, like just based on the scale of it. And maybe this is coming from someone who's not been, but I feel like they maybe put like Ghostbusters in here and swapped the locations, like put monsters where Ghostbusters was. And I feel the same way in Orlando. I kind of almost wish this swapped with like Triplets of Terror, and we got to get a soundstage Monsters house. And because we haven't had a soundstage Monsters house since Bride. I mean, the parade buildings are kind of like that, but since we don't have them anymore, I feel like you could have done more to scale. I would love for them to do Creature. Yes. I would want them to do Creature, and I think it's time. 35, I think, should be honestly the last Monsters year for a minute. Save it for a while, because I feel like we've seen it so much, and now they're just kind of I don't want to say filler IP, but I kind of feel like filler IP, where Yeah, whatever. We have like 3 big IPs. Okay, we need like 4 or 5. That's what we need. Yeah, monsters are there. Sure, let's throw them in there. We have so much we can do with them, and I'm not saying that the houses are bad. This house, I don't think is a bad house. I think it is as a Universal Monsters house. It is not great as compared to the other houses because those have also set such a high precedent between Monsters in 2019, Bride of Frankenstein Lives, Legends Collide, Unmasked, even Frankenstein meets the Wolfman in Hollywood. So many great houses in that lineup. I think this house is a good haunted house. I think it does all the things, all the technical things right. So scares are fun. Some of the set design is really, really cool. The costumes are fun, but it just, as a Universal Monsters house, I think that's where it starts to falter. So yeah, I won't spoil the ending, but it's I don't. From what I understand, Arkham, that has always been the ending. That was always what they wanted to do with it. And I just learned that part. But yeah, so keep that in mind. It just feels weird having new characters, history, deep dive in the audios to see their fate. It makes me lose. Oh, what you did there, but either way, no, I don't think Victoria will suffer the same fate because Victoria they got to keep around for. She's the face of the land. I mean, as much as people want to say, I mean, I guess the other monsters too, but like, she's the story-wise the face of Dark Universe. All right, Monsters. We're almost 2 hours in. We still have 6 more houses, so we're gonna. I'm gonna try to do these a little faster, so we can try to keep things moving a little more. But I'm having a fun time. All right, so we did all our IPs. Let's talk about originals and what's probably the most well-known original this year. Let's talk about Slaughter Cinema 2. Not saying this is my favorite original. This is pretty high up on my list. I know there are others that are great. There are other great originals this year, but Slaughter Cinema 2 is a whole lot of fun. It doesn't reinvent the wheel, but there's a lot of surprises in here that for people who have not, I guess for people who haven't been to the event yet, you only got a couple weeks, so keep that in mind. But if you haven't, I won't spoil necessarily what the surprises are. There are, I think, 2 rooms that really have like wow moments in Slaughter Cinema 2. And a lot of the other ones are just plain fun. It's just a fun house, I think. I know, is it as good as the first one? I don't know. I wasn't there for the first one. I did talk about this earlier, but the audio mixing in here is kind of atrocious. In terms of it's just like, I don't know if that was how the first one was or not, but it's just so loud in here. Like even more loud than I feel like it's normally in the houses, and especially the tents. But yeah, this thing here, I'm definitely talking about this in future videos, but like, yeah, what potential houses we could see, scare zones, houses, IPs, whatever we could see, things they try in here that I think could be used moving forward. And that's a great question, Arkham. Which deserve a house? For me, I think it's a 3-way tie. For me, I want most a Hatchet and Chains house because they've done Westerns before, although it's been a minute. It's been almost 10 years since we saw the Western at Halloween Horror Nights with Ghost Town. But also, it's not the kind of Western that they bring in this house. The kind of Western we see here is like a Clint Eastwood style, like Sergio Leone spaghetti Western, like cowboys gunslinging kind of Western, right? Not gunslinging in here, but like in general. And I really would love something like that. Very over-the-top, gory Western house, but also Mardi Gras murders. Doing like a more Mardi Gras style. I mean, we've done Louisiana before, but that's more serious. Mardi Gras murders playing up the Mardi Gras factor, almost like they did with the Zombie Gras Scare Zone back in, I think it was 2010, 2011, around that area. Doing something like that, of like a Mardi Gras actual, like, let's do the celebration of Mardi Gras and let's lampoon that a little bit. And then Killer Kringles, I think it's time for us to get a holiday house. Holiday, like Christmas, winter holidays, Santa Claus, snowmen, elves, all kinds of that. I need that in my life. But yeah, that's what I want. But also Heavy Metal Hell 3D. I know there's like April's talking about Heavy Metal Hell 3D. That's another one that I'm like, yeah, I think that one is definitely going to be popular. I think that one's one that it almost felt like they went into this house knowing they want to do something with that. And a lot of people I feel like have responded to that house or that scene. So those are some of the ones that I want to see. Zyborgs. Yep. I think Zyborgs too. I like the concept of Zyborgs, although I would like to see them do something a little more like something different, like not different, but like really play up the cyborg factor and like the sci-fi factor rather than the whole like apocalypse factor, because they do apocalypse houses like every year. Apocalypse stuff every year. Mummy strippers. Yeah, well, I know April, you also talk about mummy strippers. I would really, I don't know if that were to get a full house, but you never know. You never know. I wish the transition hallways weren't as long. That is true. A lot of the times you spend in this house are like in between hallways, and I get that's the point, but also like you said, it kind of takes away from some of the scenes. Some scenes, especially, you're like, and that's it. Okay. Like Undead Clowns is like that, where I'm like, and it's over. Okay, cool. Mummy Strippers too, kind of too, where it's like, okay, and there we go, we're out of here, and we're on to the next thing. It is what it is. That's kind of the nature of Slaughter Cinema, but also, I do agree. I think some of those transition hallways are entirely too long. Would love to see them try this 3D house again, and hopefully it would go over well. I don't know if we would get 3D glasses. I'm shocked they didn't sell 3D glasses this year and market them of like, the Slaughter Cinema, like you can buy Slaughter Cinema exclusive glasses that are like $10 or $12 or whatever, and be like, you can wear them in the house. I'm surprised they didn't go for that, because that just seems like a way, like, a way for them to be like, get excited about the house. And I know, like, it goes back to my thing of like Slaughter Cinema merch. What was going on with that? Well, where was that at? Like, where Slaughter Cinema merch was something that I felt was like a lock-in, because so many people love the house. And even if you didn't like love the house, it's like kind of that, though, like this, I feel like down the line, I feel like people are definitely gonna love the house, even if it's not the favorite of this year. But you never know. But yeah, Slaughter Cinema is fun. I've talked ad nauseum about this house. I do think it's fun. I do think it is, I won't say it's inconsistent, but like the reason why this isn't my number one is just because I feel like it needs that punch where Ghostbusters has, where I'm like, I get the scale, like I get this is a Sprung10 house, but even with like Dr. Oddfellows, I felt a scale that was like, whoa, like there are layers to this story. And with this, it feels very surface level, which I get. I mean, that's kind of the novelty of Slaughter Cinema. It's not really meant to be taken too seriously, but also, think about that when you're thinking about the house. But I do I have a lot of fun with this house. I try to do this house every single night I'm at the event. Try to do it more than once if I can. So yeah, I'm having fun with this one. Holidays in Hell vibe, yeah. I wouldn't be shocked if we got a Holidays in Hell house. I know it's been talked about for a couple of years now, but I would really love a Holidays in Hell. I know we had HR Blood and Guts, but like a Holidays in Hell, like the version from Hollywood, for more of a modern audience, or modern audience, modern crowd. Not the best, just on the same level. Yeah. I think that's what it. I think that's what it is, because I know folks that have been like, it's not as good as the first one, which sequels are never as good as the first one in most things, most times, but especially when it comes to Horror Nights, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's a sequel, but you never know. In a couple years, once we see if they were to experiment with some of these ideas, you might come out of this going, oh man, the house was actually pretty interesting and pretty important, like the first one was, where like, yeah, maybe on the surface when you went through it, it's like it's fun, but like I feel like people maybe didn't know how much of an impact Slaughter Cinema was going to have in the future, to where it's getting a sequel. It's been referenced more times than I can count. They've had spin-offs, several, like, Pumpkin Guts, Wicked Growth, kind of a little bit, Bugs kind of feels like a spin-off-ish of Slaughter Cinema, although it's not like direct. definitely bringing that same tone. So yeah, that's how I feel. Okay, let's hop to, I don't remember what's next on here. Major Sweets. Let's talk about Major Sweets. Major Sweets Candy Factory. Talk about an old school HHN feeling house. This house really feels like it delivered that vibe of like a Leave It to Cleaver, like a almost like an HR Blood and Guts, like that kind of house. Like, I guess it's not the same. Obviously, this is 2024, but like delivering that sort of, it's close quarters. It's kind of like gross, and some of the visuals will stick with you after leaving the house, but it's also campy and goofy and silly. But it's not like the Zone, which I like, and I like, and I wish there was more of the Zone in the house, like the feel of the Zone. We do get it a little bit with the music and some of the set pieces, but like I felt like the color of the Zone isn't in the house, which again, I think it's a positive and it's a negative, where like depending on what you like, if you're someone who loved the Zone, maybe you might feel like the house doesn't have that same energy, or vice versa. So, either way. But yeah, lots of fun, lots of quotables. This might be a quote, one of the quotable houses. This one and I think Goblins Feast are both pretty quotable. And the sets, I mean, what they're able to do with the Fast and Furious tent is commendable, considering what the Fast and Furious 10 is. This is the best house they've done here, bar none. Like, they're like, this is it. And I like Chucky, and this is still it. So it makes me wonder if they're just going to go with originals here. Maybe like almost like for my Hollywood folks, almost like a Parisian Courtyard situation, where I feel like originals have been kind of used there because they have full manipulation of what that location can do. And it's like, well, we know what we can do here because we're using originals rather than trying to shoehorn IPs that may need bigger sets or more dynamic sets. But yeah, so yeah, it's almost a miracle that it worked in the Fast and Furious location. Yeah, because even with the bigger tent, like that, like you don't like, okay, when you want something that I like to do, I like to look up. Like, not even just, if there's something up there, like, yeah, I'll look. But like also just like sometimes I look up, and whenever I'm walking through the house, the tents are there's usually a little bit of room, especially with the new ones. You can see a little bit of room between the ceiling and the top of the set. If it's an open set if it's not covered. This one, you're looking up and you're like, oh, the roof is right there. Oh, I'm looking up and I'm seeing a sprinkler that's like only maybe like 10 feet away from my head. Like it's not like the sets aren't that big, maybe not even that much. So I'm so glad they were able to make it work. And like I said, for this kind of house, yeah, sure. It's a tight, close quarters candy factory. I think if they would have put this in a soundstage, maybe they could have done some fun stuff. But also, I like what they did here. And I think that's cool. Worry this was going to be 3D. Yeah, I thought this was definitely going to be like a 3D adjacent. Like, kind of like, it's not 3D, but it looks like it's 3D. It's like super colorful. And, that's cool at times, but sometimes you want something a little grittier. And that's what I get with this. Didn't expect the house to be interactive with the buttons. Yeah, no, me neither. Like, as many guest activated triggers. They have, from what I understand, there are 3 guest activated triggers. And they're all fun. And I love that we're getting to see that again. Last year, Chucky had 1, and this year we're getting 3 at least in this house. So yeah, so much fun. That's what I will say. This is fun. It's a lot like Slaughter Cinema. It's fun. It's a fun house. Maybe I don't like it. I mean, I don't want to say I don't like it as much as I did when I first went through it, but also like I feel like this one, because the sets are kind of limited because they're so limited with space, sometimes like I go through it and I'm like, I'm not getting as much from this as I am with some of the other houses where I can like look around and be like, oh, I didn't see that the last time. And full disclosure, that comes with me going very often. I'm going like once a week. So it's like my perspective is going to be different from someone who's only going one time and going in the houses one time. But still, I'm gonna point that out because that is partially my experience with the house, and obviously, my opinion. But Yeah, I do think this is a fun one. I think Major Suites is fun. Major Suites is fun. Okay, let's go to the next. Not too much to say about this one, honestly. Let's go to the next. Goblin Feast. Ooh, now this one here. When you talk about fun house, this house is like, this one's it. I think this one nails that because it delivers fun with scares and the sets. I was shocked at how intricate these sets are for being in a tent, one of the new tents. This is the standard of what these tents should be, where you're going into this tavern, you can see other parts of the house from the first room. Vice versa, when you're in that second part of the house, you can see the beginning of the house. There are giant moving pieces, like moving set pieces in here, and there are tall sets. There are like wide open, like almost courtyard-esque set. Like one set in particular, it's very wide open. You need like a whole house and stuff like that. I'm like, that's what I wanted here. That's what I wanted with Goblin's Feast. But also for me, and this is every house, but I think this house especially, the characters make this. The characters make this house fun. The interactions I'm getting in Goblin's Feast is so much fun. Every single time I get a couple really funny, or scary interactions. Yeah, Goblin's Feast is easily the house that I think has improved the most for me in terms of like, this will be my most run house of the year. I can already tell you. I've done this house so many times, and it doesn't really get old. It doesn't. Do I like it more than Dueling Dragons? I might. I don't know. I do think I do wish there was maybe one more scene, but I'm enjoying how the house flows, the story, the aesthetic, the vibe, the fun. Some might say it's the Dead Man Blood Moon house. I can see that. Very intricate sets that you can see pieces from across the house in that way. Yeah, I can see it. So yeah, Goblin's Feast, lots of fun. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I really need to say about Goblin's Feast that I haven't already said. Scares. I did talk about scares, that they were like this house was kind of scary. There are some tunnels that you like. Last night when I went through, I was shocked at the amount of there was a triple scare in there that was like intense, and I was shocked. I was like, whoa, I am shocked at how intense this scare is for this house, because this house I think is also a very good entry level house for Horror Nights. Like Ghostbusters, yes. This house, I think it will be right there with it in terms of like, if you've never been to Horror Nights before and you're like, what do I want? What am I going to get myself into? I think this one's a good balance of like scale, sets, scares, fun, and like some iconic characters. I'm not going to say all that. I know that's a like little slogan, but it's but like characters that I think will be like, if they put them in a scare zone or something, and I'll be like, oh my god, I love to see Goblins. Like almost like Killer Clowns. Like it kind of feels like Killer Clowns from Outer Space, where everybody's got their own little personality. That's how I feel about it. Heard that the giant hand didn't work. It didn't work there for a minute. Like it was the same day that they replaced Slimer was the day that the hand started working again. So the hand was like, it sat like this, which, fun fact, it's actually a hand reused from a summer tribute store a couple of years back. It was a King Kong hand, the King Kong photo op that was like this, and you stand right here for a picture. It was sitting like this, and then it started moving, like it starts doing this little movement again, which is a lot of fun. It adds so much to the scene, and I'm glad they got it fixed, because once I saw it, I was like, oh wow, yeah, this was what I was expecting, and then they didn't move, then I would have been disappointed. Yeah, they really nailed the hand. What do you mean by one more room? I'm trying to think, because like I like the way the story flows. Maybe a little more time in the dungeons of the castle, because the dungeons I think is like the last scene, pretty much last couple scenes of the house. I do wish we maybe had one more scene in the dungeon that had a couple more scares. Just kind of filling out the area a little more, because I definitely feel like you're in the tavern, then you go in the forest, and you're in the forest there for a little while in the forest and the tunnels, and then you go to the castle, and then you're near the end, or the dungeon, I guess I should say. So maybe another dungeon scene I think would have been cool. especially because it was kind of different than Dueling Dragons. Because Dueling Dragons did the forest thing. I will say the forest scene in Dueling Dragons I like more than the forest scene in Goblins, more because there was more stuff going on. But also, they didn't really do a whole lot of castle stuff with Dueling Dragons in terms of like the dungeons with orcs and trolls. That's what I wanted out of this house, and that's what I got. So I wish I got to see something like that. Yeah, nice to see them sort of expand on the Dueling Dragons universe. I wouldn't mind if they keep doing it. If they wanted to, like, maybe make a house about like dark fairies. Like, I know they had a fairy in the Dueling Dragons house. That would be kind of cool. I'm trying to think of what other characters they had, like rando characters. Maybe like more wizard stuff, like not the dragons, but like where's Merlin come from? Like that kind of stuff. Maybe if they wanted to expand that. But yeah, I don't know. I think the fantasy thing's really working for them, and I really see them leaning into it. I love the goblin at the end. Yes, the food is escaping. Yes, I love all the little lines. That's what I said about Major Sweets, that I feel like the quotes are like top notch for this house. Yeah, fantasy theme house have potential. There are plenty of places you can go with it too. Like, you don't have to lean, because this one's very like Dungeons and Dragons esque, and very like kind of feels like Shrek a little bit. You know, it kind of feels like Shrek, like a little more lighthearted, but you can go real dark if you wanted to. What does that mean? Forest is technically part of the Lost Continent. I mean, it wouldn't hurt for Universal to bring HHN. I don't know if they'd bring back HHN and Islands of Adventure, if they would, but I mean, if they wanted to do like a fantasy forest, like scare zone in the Central Park area, I think that could be cool. Like I said, all on characters from Dueling Dragons and from Goblins fees. Let's get Dark Fairies. Let's get some like different, fantasy characters and have them roam around the zone. I think it'd be kind of cool to do it. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if they do it in IOA, but you never know. At this point, you never know. Let's get out of my swamp. Yes, I feel the Shrek vibes radiating from Goblins fees, and that's why I like it so much. Okay. Goblins Feast is a lot of fun. Let's talk about the next one. I don't remember what I kind of forget which houses I have on here. Oh, Monstros. Okay. Ignore the white border. Monstros, the Monsters of Latin America. What to say about this house? I kind of was dogging on it a little bit early into the season. I came out of here. This and Monsters were the houses I came out of this year kind of disappointed. And I was like, oh, like that's what we're getting? And I will say this house behind Insidious is the most consistently scary house in terms of, I know on a good run, I'm getting 3 to 4 good scares in here. So I'm going to spoil a little bit. El Cibon, Stiltwalker, and Buddy Around a Corner combo has hit me a couple times in the Pulqueria, coming right off the left. The Muerte at the end, the Stiltwalker Muerte. Ooh. I know a lot of folks, including myself, have kind of the grievance of what they did with the finale, "This grave is for you," replacing a live actor with an animatronic or like a statue. But I will say I like that they have that Muerte scare at the end where it's like, oh yeah, that's like, I won't say it's worth them not having an actor there, but it's still cool. I think it's like, I'm not too bummed about it, because if that scare wasn't there, it's like probably the best scare in the house, and because it just catches you so off guard, even though I know he's there. I know Muerte's there, but they get up in your face too. I'm like, okay. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of the redesigns, and I don't like how they clash with the animatronics from Hollywood, the puppets and the animatronics from Hollywood, because they're the Hollywood designs and we have the Orlando designs. And that's just kind of frustrating. Like just from a design perspective, I'm like, why didn't we keep the designs of Hollywood, or not use those Hollywood attractions and just do it all via Orlando version? Because here we go. It's fascinating to have a Hollywood house and vibes and tone and Orlando structure. Yeah. And I don't think it fully works. But I won't say it's not fun. I will say it's not a good time, because this house I do find myself going back to like every night. Every night I'm here. Also because the wait time's all very low. And I'm like, I think it's something with the soundstage, because like for the last 3 years, I mean, and this house, Monstros, is like, has a lot of good rep. Like I thought, oh, this will be the house that begins to have a line here. No, because like even the like posted line, if you're going to the park at any time in the next 2 weeks, know the line for this is most likely not as long as it says it is. 35 posted will be like 15, like pretty much every time. If half of that soundstage is full, you're not waiting longer than like 20 minutes. Unless there's a cash change or something happens. So it's like Goblins Feast. Goblins Feast, I forgot to say this, but like it's so easy to get in and out of that I've done it so many times. And this one's the same situation where it's like, I know I'm going to be able to do Monstros. There's usually not going to be a line, especially later into the night. Last night I went, what was this? Maybe like midnight, 1 a.m.-esque, and no line. Pretty much a walk-up. The end with Muerto was a letdown. I agree. It's kind of a letdown. I wasn't a big fan. Yeah, the same thing. This is exactly what I was talking about. The order, I'll get to that in a second. But the Muerte animatronic, just kind of like, because it's such a dynamic scene in the finale of the Hollywood version where he's like, this grave is for you. And it's like, it's something that you're not getting here. And then the clash just really, I understand because they needed to have that stuff in there, I guess, for the wow factor. And I will say it's cool to see that stuff. Like the Elsie Bone puppet is good scares. It works, but it also is like at the expense of having a complete narrative that doesn't feel like it's clashing. It's like Monsters. It's the narrative that I'm having more of a problem with than the execution of the house. I don't like, well, Monsters is different, but yeah, these are all like design things that I'm like, why did they do that? Still don't understand why did they switch it? I said it in the video. Elsie Bone's supposed to be like the big boss. And by putting him in the middle, while Lechuza is kind of like, hey, I'm here too. The one design change that I do like, sorry. I'm sorry. Talahuepuchi, right? Yeah. Trying to say it correctly. That design change was really sick. I really like how they did her design in terms of like, it's more human based than bird, which allows for Lechuza to have its own like design. Like I feel like it separates itself from the Talahuepuchi version than the Hollywood, which kind of feels like they're kind of too samey because they both look like birds. But yeah. Love the, oh yeah. Wait, hold on. I want to talk about this. Muerte sounds like an emo teenager more than a decaying man. Yeah, I feel like he's just kind of like an old dude roaming around in our version, singing. He sings the whole time. But yeah, it's funny. Anyway, I wanted to mention that comment. It's a fun comment. I like the Clash of Monstros. Yeah. That cemetery scene, the return to the cemetery, is my favorite section of the house. The finale from when you go back to the cemetery, you have that cool statue scare, which is fun. I love when they do that. But also everybody's coming out, and yeah. And it would have been great if we had a Muerte de Sana animatronic at the end, but whatever. Yeah, now the Talahuepuchi doesn't look like another bird. Yeah. And I think that adds a little bit of variety. And it also feels like it's more true to the actual designs that I've seen from the folklore that I have researched. It looks more like a human base. Like obviously she has the big claws, which I think is cool, but it's less of like I said, just a giant bird thing, because Lechuza is just a straight bird. Like she's just a turkey. Like that, that's the whole thing. Yeah, it's pretty disturbing. Like I will say, it's pretty disturbing. The way they kind of present her scenes versus the Hollywood version. That's what I was expecting from Hollywood. Talahuepuchi, I think, is the biggest improvement. I will say Lechuza is kind of a little bit of an improvement. Although, yeah, because I do like that, but I do feel like with her and with Elsie Bone, they have a lot of dead space. Where Elsie Bone has that whole thing where there's just a whole section with no scare, or scare very infrequently. And I'm like, why do we have this in here? Like, why didn't we just use this for maybe like doing this instead of having, because another thing that I talked about that I didn't talk about, but I've noticed, you don't go into the sack of bones. You go through the sack of bones into the pulqueria, but you don't go inside the sack of bones. And that's one of the coolest part of the Hollywood house, where you go inside the sack of bones, and that's where you have the big puppet heads. With this, that I feel like is a missed opportunity for that scene that is kind of like long with no scare. Would have been cool to have that bag of bones scene where it's like, yeah, it feels like there's something else happening here. It's some set variety. I get they have the pigs and stuff, but like they're not going hard with the smell. They're not putting the pigs like where you have to like shuffle through them like they do in Hollywood. So it's like there's no real punch to that scene. So I wonder what's going on. Like, why was that scene even there? Because it doesn't have any impact on me. I'm kind of like, okay, well, I'm waiting until we get to the next thing. Yeah, the sack part was weird. It was like that's what I'm saying. There are glimpses of greatness in this house, and then there are other weird choices. And I'm like what? Hope to God they don't do Monstros 2. I don't know if they'll do Monstros 2, honestly. I would love to see a Monstros scare zone, like an Orlando scare zone of Monstros with some of the Monstros 2 characters. Sure, bring El Charro, bring the Cadejo dog, bring out El Cucuy, and then we can bring the characters from the house, from Orlando's house, and have it be like a Pueblo where you're walking around, and it's just kind of like I feel like that could work. I know they did it in Hollywood with the Pueblo del Terror scare zone, which kind of inspired this house. So I think that would have been cool. Yeah, I hope they do that. I would love to see some more cryptid houses. Like that's one that I do want to see them tackle. Okay. Yeah, we again come back to Monstros if we have any more thoughts, but what's next? The museum. One thing before we jump to the museum, I know there's a question here about El Cadejo. Maybe make him, I don't want to say like a werewolf, but like make him like a more allow him to kind of walk around, I guess. Maybe use it like, if you wanted to, like an animatronic in a scare zone, like American Werewolf style, where they have like an animatronic pop out or something. I don't know. But I think there are ways to do it where it's not like weird, you know. Okay. Museum, deadly exhibits. I like this house a lot more than most people do. Most people, this is a solid number 10 or number 9. This for me is one of my favorite houses of the event. And because I think it is the most consistent house in terms of runs, I've had one decent run in here. The rest have been great. Runs. And my biggest negative is the queue. I don't like the queue. I don't like the queue for this house. The queue that goes through, what do you call that? Simpsons. I don't like the queue for this one. Because it makes it so it's like, it's a house that I know doesn't get a super long wait, but I never want to wait in that queue. But the house itself is fun. It's not what I was expecting, and I think that's a lot of people, it's not what I was expecting. For me, it comes down to, it is a house that I guess my expectations were so low. I was curious, and the one thing that I didn't do, which is the one thing I was excited for, was the story. They kind of dropped the ball with like, I thought it was going to be more like a mystery of like, what's the rotting stone about? Like, what's the situation? They don't really do that at all. But honestly, I'm not too against this because it feels like a museum. And in case of Quackers, this is one thing. It more seems like the Viking scene would have been really cool. For me, maybe a couple more, but I like the idea of it being like an actual museum and not a recreation of different folklore. Because then it would, I think, feel like a slaughter cinema, but it's folklore. Or a, I guess, anthology, like a Case Files, but it's folklore. Where you're just going scene to scene to scene to scene. Oh, we're in Viking ship. Oh, we're in Egypt. Oh, we're in here. It kind of lacks that museum feel where you're actually seeing exhibits, and it's more like the museum itself. Also, the museum feels like museums I've been to before. And it like they could have gone with something big like the Louvre or whatever, like a big museum that you would expect, but they didn't. And I think I like that choice, but I also don't like that choice. So that's why I'm saying with this, I wish there were a lot of things I wish they did. Wish they did more like art-based scares, like some more like statues that kind of like scared and then move back into place, like they did in Monstros. Some cool like painting, like in Insidious, they have a really cool scare with a painting, and where they recreate an actor to look like a piece of a painting, and then he jumps out. That's what I wanted out of this house, and I didn't get that. But I'm not upset with what we did yet. But I know a lot of folks are not loving it. Least Favorite House Museum, most anticipated original. See that? I get why the mix, like the mixture of like, I don't know how I feel about this one. I get it. For me, I guess, like I said, my expectation was pretty low. So maybe it's because it was like, oh, this is something different. This is something unique. Yeah, I think a lot of expectations were that Night of the Museum feel, but I think the scale was a lot smaller, which is a shame because it makes me think they're not going to do a house like this again with a museum, and I think they could do it really cool. I think just this one just doesn't, it's just not vibing with people, with folks. Furious me how much Kevin Heimbach keeps mispronouncing museum. I don't know how he says it in the video, but shout out to Kevin Heimbach. I love his channel. Great HHN creator, but I thought that was a funny comment. I just feel like the concept was cool, but the execution was all right. Surprised they didn't do any extreme things, and I think that's partially the disappointment for this house is where's the extreme scares, and I think that's something that I think they could have done with this house. I see a lot of that, and a lot of scares were employees. Yeah, I noticed there are quite a few just like museum employee scares. For me, though, what I like about this house, I think what I really do enjoy about this is I feel like there's a decent amount of variety, and I like all the scrim and misdirects. I love those kind of scares. So like maybe it's more of a personal thing, like the guy in the ghillie suit. The Goblin, which I don't know why they chose to do a Goblin when they have a whole Goblin house, and even that character is a reused character from Goblin Feast, whatever. The like wallpaper that they did in the weekend and doing that again, that is really what I like, that sort of variety of the different misdirect scares. But I see what you're saying. Also, the beheaded people, yeah, that was still a little weird. I'm just like, okay, that's an interesting choice, but so the thing is like, I guess I'm just along for the ride on this one. I'm like, yeah, let's do whatever weird thing you want to do. Sure. Maybe it's FOMO from last year because the Darkest Deal was in this location. Maybe I'm trying to be more generous to it for that reason. But yeah, the museum deadly exhibits, it's cool. Yes, the final room, and I like the smell in there. I talked about this earlier, but I like the smell in this house. Yeah, and those big, like, almost like bloaters from Last of Us, like the huge, like, monster creatures, they're awesome. I just love looking at the costume. That's what it was. The costumes in here, I think, are really neat. I think that they're really neat. Compared to, not even compared to, I just think they're neat. But yeah. Museum Deadly Exhibits, it's cool. It's a cool one. I do like it. This one will probably remain in my top 5 for it might drop. I don't know, but this one's up there for me in terms of a house that I do love. Every time I go in here, I'm like, oh yeah, I had a good time in here, And I know a lot of other people, a lot of people don't like it, but it's okay. Sometimes you have those houses. All right, and I think we have one more. And then we'll do some last minute talks and then call it because it's almost at 2.5 hours. Not bad. Triplets of Terror. Now, Triplets of Terror. What can I say about Triplets of Terror? This house, unfortunately, fell off for me hardcore in terms of I had a couple really great run-throughs of this early in the event, and I thought this was going to be the one. I thought this was going to be maybe not the one, but I thought this was going to be a solid like 3 or 4 on my list in terms of like slasher, aggressive, quirky, weird, gross, disturbing house. And it just doesn't hit that for me at this point. All the runs I've gotten to this house in the past like few weeks have just been from really bad to just fine. And I feel like there's not a lot of like, I feel like I said, for this being in a soundstage, I didn't get that soundstage feel. I got this should have been in a tent. Like this could have really worked in a tent. Maybe in a tent, we could have had more close quarters. Personally, I don't know. Maybe I know a lot of people are really loving this one. I know a lot of people really liking it. and it's getting like a fan base. And I like the concept. I will say the concept, the characters, the masks, especially like the masks and the look of the characters, I think is so cool. And I kind of just wish this is another house. I wish we maybe had a couple more scenes in, like a couple more different like places where we get to see them, you know, like I would like to see them raid the what do you call it? The cake factory. We go by the cake factory and we see the guy on the ground who looks like he's been basically stuffed with cakes to death. But I kind of wish we get to go in there and be like, oh, we're in the cake decorating place. Or we're in like a, you know, whatever, like a birthday decoration manufacturing or something like that, or even in the police station. Let's go into a police station. Let's have some fun kills and scares in there. I like what we do get. I wish we had a little more, and I wish there were just also more characters in here. I feel like this house is also kind of light on characters, and I think I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like maybe it's just because it is mostly the triplets, which is what I expected. But also, I'm like looking at this character count. I'm like, there's not that many people in this house. Not even on a full run. Like, just there's not that many characters in the house. So maybe that there's something to have to do with that. I mean, a lot of these other houses are stacked with characters. Insidious, Ghostbusters, Goblins. They have so many characters. But yeah, I like it. Probably near the bottom of my list now. If I get a couple good runs before the end of the season, maybe it could definitely rise up. I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all. I do think there are things that I'm like, oh, I kind of wish they did this and that, but whatever. But yeah, I like the characters. That's the biggest thing. I like the true crime podcast. I know there's a comment about the true crime podcast. I wish there was a little more tie-in with that. They have that scene where it's like, and the triplets of terror are running around, and it's like the urban myths podcast. I like that, and I kind of wish we got a little more payoff. Like, what do I think would have been really cool is if maybe they had some statues in that scene, and they're like, you know, it's actually them recording, right? It's not like maybe these characters, or maybe there is a character in there. That's not really a scare. It's just more like a story piece. And then we see those podcasters maybe dead by the end or something like that. See it be like a through line, or maybe some narration of each of the kills and like almost reading it as the news that's happening, and you're watching the actual murder going down. That's the one thing that I wish was like more of a connective tissue. But I do like it. I like it. I don't love it. I do think that it's like some things did surprise me. I like how visceral the house is. Outside of the whole, you know, dog situation. Like, I like how it's very like kind of like mean-spirited house, but it's also very enigmatic. You don't really know what's going on with these characters. You don't know what they're doing. You don't know why they're doing it. They don't speak. So it's like, it's that kind of mystery that's kind of lost with things like Friday the 13th and Michael Myers and stuff that have so many, you know, IP slashers that we've seen so many times. With this, it's like, it's something so you don't really know what's going on with these three. And I like that. Be curious to see if they use triplets in the future. Definitely think this one will be one that comes up somewhere. I could see this being in like almost like I keep referring to like Leave It to Cleaver, but like a house like that, that's like maybe not like a icon status, but like almost characters that you're like, oh yeah, the triplets, like they're fun. Bring them back somewhere in a scare zone or in an anniversary house or in a random spot. Maybe do a sequel of this in 10 years. Maybe at Halloween Horror Nights 43, we get another house because it's every 10 years they come out. I wish they maybe did it like every 5 years, so that maybe they could bring it back more often. But whatever. Either way, I would have, you know what, honestly would have been cool. And this could be something they maybe do in the coming years if they were going to bring these characters back. Let's go back in time. We are in 2024, and they've been doing this since 1984. What about 1994? When they're, you know, kind of like young adults doing this. What about 2004? You know, like we can go back, and I think a 90s triplets house, I think could be really cool. And you could really I know people want like a 90s house at Horror Nights. So I think that could be a fun way to do it. Like 90s slasher-esque in the era of like Ghostface, you know, like doing how would you imagine a triplets of terror house in the 90s? I don't know. Yeah, triplets top 5. I wouldn't say top 5, but you know what? If it's in your top 5, more power to you, man. I love triplets. Is fun. It's a fun house if you get a good run. I just haven't gotten good runs, and it could be something that by the end I'm like, okay, I really like this one. But triplets has that major suites feel. Yeah. I mean, I think they're definitely some of the most recognizable characters to come out of this year in terms of like, you know, they have their own house. These are all new characters. And I do respect that. They're all new characters, and it's an all new slasher that's original. Like, we don't get that all the time. I mean, hell, 3 of the 6 originals are like Monstros. We've already seen that. Major Suites, already seen it. Slaughter Cinema. It's new characters, but we already seen it. This is like completely new. Goblin's Feast is kind of like Dueling Dragons. Museum is different, but it's like, that's probably the most out of like left field one with triplets, but triplets is pretty weird, pretty wild, pretty weird, and I like it. So yeah, the rumors about the strangers, I don't know, like I guess, but I don't really see it. Like when I go through the house, unless that was something that was changed really early on to where it didn't really even get that far in development, I'm looking at it going, I don't really see strangers here. Like I don't really see like the set pieces to where it'd be like, sometimes you go to a house like Hellblock or like when they did the Hive or the Purge, where they like, you can tell it was supposed to be something else. You're like, yeah, this. These were all scenes that were already for something else. But for this one, I didn't really get that. So, Triplets of Terror, the final house we're talking about today, or tonight, I should say. And yeah, I think it's a good time. I really don't think there are any bad houses this year. I don't. This one just kind of is falling off for me, but it's also like something's got to be near the bottom of the list. And personally, it depends if we were supposed to have 5 IP houses. From what I understand and from what I heard, going as far back as early this year, I heard a 4 was pretty much always locked in. It was always going to be 4, and I didn't know what 4 they were, but I did hear, and I do feel like it was always supposed to be 4. And because this, this year is not on the same level as last year with 5. And that's counting Universal Monsters as an IP, which they do. They count Universal Monsters as an IP. Even if you don't, they do. Yeah, what a sad story that is. Hopefully at some point, maybe with the new movie, they're like, hey, we need some people to actually support this movie. So maybe we get the Hornets crowd to get in on it. I don't know. Paramount, I mean, they're working with Quiet Place, so I feel like now could be a good time to do it. I think it would turn a lot of heads. I think a lot of people would be, if they were to bring Scream, that would be big. That'd be big time. That'd be one of those IPs that people have been clamoring for years. But yeah, okay, let's pop off of the slideshow, and yeah, I don't know. I feel like we've talked about pretty much everything. If there's anything we haven't talked about or things y'all want to talk about further, questions, comments. I did say I would do rankings, and I know I do have rankings. I will say I was debating if I was going to do rankings. I know I put it in the title, so I'll give y'all some rankings because I don't want to be like false advertising. But yeah, let's look at my rankings. Wait, got to go to my list. So right now, there are only 7 of you in here. I'll give you my rankings. If you don't want to listen, tune off the stream right now, and you can come back in like a couple minutes. I'll be done with my rankings. But right now, my rankings: 1, Ghostbusters. I already kind of mentioned that. 2, Slaughter Cinema. Slaughter Cinema 2. 3. These are right now, by the way. 3, Goblins Feast. 4, Museum. 5, Insidious. 6, Major Suites. 7, Quiet Place. 8, Monstros. 9, Triplets. And 10, Bloodlines, Universal Monsters. Those are as of last night. And a lot of those changed last night. I'll tell you that. So there you go. Those are my rankings. I want to give you all. I put it in the title. Might as well put it in. Say I have my mid-season rankings as we're 2 weeks away from the end. But anyway, Chris Gorilla. Something I wanted to say, but I couldn't because I was busy for Ghostbusters. I think Garaka's characters look better. See, I like R versions because I like the big heads. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just me, but I like the big heads with the big like jaw. But Hollywood's look more real. Like they look more true to the movie. I will agree with that part. Smile 2, getting good reviews in Paramount. Yeah, maybe. Maybe I can honestly see them doing maybe a mixture of the two, kind of like what they did with The Quiet Place, where they do Smile 1 and 2. They're probably going to do a Smile 3. I could see. I've heard nothing but good reviews about Smile 2. I want to see it. The first one I thought was all right, but I've heard this one's really great, and I really like the premise. But I don't see where you really do that because 1 and 2 are so different. So unless you kind of did an IP original thing with it, I could see that being something interesting. But yeah, just trying to check this, trying to see if there's anything interesting that I haven't said in the video. I have like little notes. Okay, something's telling me that Smile's definitely getting a house next year. I don't know about next year. I don't know though. I don't know. Maybe, you never know. I never thought A Quiet Place would get a house, and here we are. So, any thoughts on the Hollywood exclusive? So I haven't been to Hollywood. I'm sure y'all probably know this. I think Texas Chainsaw looks really cool. That one I've heard nothing but good things about. That one looks awesome. Dead Exposure looks fun. I like the Return of the Living Dead vibe I get from Dead Exposure. Weekend, I don't think it looks as good as the first one, but I think it still looks fun, and I like how trippy and weird it is. And then, what else is there? Weekend, Texas. Oh, Monstros. Yeah, that one looks cool. It looks like they kind of reused a lot from the first one, like set-wise. But it still looks like, you know what? Even if they're reusing stuff in the first one, they did such a good job with that first house that I feel like I don't think they do a Monsters 3. I don't think they'll do another one. I think this one will be it. Unless they have, I think they should go back to doing like one Monstro. Like if you wanted to do, I know a lot of people said, I wish this was an El Kukui house. I could see that. I wish they would kind of go back to doing just one, like La Llorona, like the Chupacabra, kind of like what they did here. Monstros 2 is pretty good. Dead Exposure, pretty amazing. That's what I've heard. Dead Exposure looks really cool. Weekend and Texas Chainsaw was crazy good. Hollywood takes the cake. That I've heard that all around. I've heard some folks saying Hollywood is better. Yeah, I think they're at the point, I think, why they're trying to set it up where they're both on the similar kind of level. Like there are things that one coast does that the other coast does better, regardless of what that is. So that it's almost like, oh, well, if you want to get the full experience, you have to visit both Hollywood and Orlando. You know, I don't know, because it is the same company. It's not like Howl-O-Scream and Horror Nights where it's two different companies, or Mickey's Not So Scary and Horror Nights, even though it's not really the same realm, but whatever. Heard the Chucky show is a bit cringe. I mean, me too, but also like I probably would have fun with it because I love Chucky. I wish we got something like that in horror makeup. I like that you know what? And the one thing I will say, even if the show's not good, at least it's an option. From the coast that has one show and it's like either you like Nightmare Fuel or you don't, at least y'all have the option to see Purge or Chucky. And I know for a long time it was just Jabberwocky, so I get it. So it's like, you know, I like having the option to see more than one show rather than, you know, if they're like, oh, I don't really care about water show, like water action. I don't care about that. I more just care about the, you know, the actual stuff. So, yeah. Yeah, it's nice to have Chucky in the live show. Yep. Ghostbusters as a ride, please. Honestly, I wouldn't even mind if they just did a version of the show. I know a lot of people have talked about that potentially being a thing they do in the future. A version of the what do you call that? The original the live action show, the Spooktacular. A version of that show with modern tech. But yeah, I think that could be something interesting. What can we add more to the Duality zone? Different characters that aren't chainsaws. Like I said, when they have the characters from the bar roaming around there, I love that. Characters from the houses, please. Because it's like, my thing is, I don't understand the idea of bringing other characters from scare zones into the front scare zone because you're going to see those characters later on. Like, you walk a few hundred feet and you're going to see the Torture Fair's characters. Same thing with Demon Queens. Swamp, it's a little farther, but you're going to see them. It's not like with the houses where you don't get to see them in a scare zone capacity, not even just for like the photo opportunities, but also for the actual, like how they interact outside of the house when they're not having to do the same jump out, scare, jump out, scare, jump out, scare. Like when they actually get to play around. That's what I want. That's what I really would have wanted to see. And more playing with the colored lighting. Like I know there's sets. Play with the colored lighting. Play with like, I know they're trying to have the blue and pink thing going on, but like use that. Like make it like a part of the zone. Have like one side is sinister, one side is surreal, and that's kind of the way like it flowed. That's what they kind of advertise. Like it's gonna choose your path. Okay, make it like actually a choice to where like they're both different. Maybe have some like I don't want to say blood and gore, but like take very similar set pieces and theme them differently to each. Like I almost think of the Demon Queen set pieces. Right? Use a couple of those to set up that zone. Use a couple Torture Fair pieces to set up that zone. So when you go, you're like, oh, I'm kind of going on a path. It's not just like, oh yeah, go down to New York and you're gonna experience Sinister. Sure. I don't know. That's what I would do though. Yeah, goons. That's what I wanted to see. Like I was expecting like they kind of get it. Like I said, chainsaws. They kind of do that, but like they're still chainsaws. So like, you know, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Have the chainsaws roam around. Have the chainsaws be the chainsaw punks. I know Hollywood already did it, but like it could be a way to tie in that theming without even doing anything that crazy. You don't need to build a whole punk rock scare zone. Just have a couple chainsaws with fun masks and leather jackets or punk inspired outfits roaming around in areas that are okay to roam around. Arkham, I know we kind of talked about Terrifier. I've seen the first two, and I don't really. I mean, I might see the third one, but I'm not like a huge fan or anything. I don't know because yes, it's extremely gruesome, but also it's kind of becoming almost like what happened with Saw, where now it's like a thing. Like now people are like loving Terrifier, and now you can go buy a Terrifier t-shirt at Hot Topic. Or you can go to Spencer's and buy a Terrifier t-shirt. You can buy Art the Clown costume for your kids. So it's like, I don't think that's going to be a bar to like, oh, I'm not going to bring it to Horror Nights. Like it's too much for Horror Nights. I don't think so. It's elevated. Yeah. Back in 2018 or whatever. Yeah, sure. Absolutely not. They wouldn't do that. But now it's so popular. Like it's so popular now. I think it's too popular to where like, it would be a bad move for them to do that. Like a bad move for them to not do Terrifier. I don't know when they would do it, but doing it at some point. But yeah, I like the Zodiac weapons. I thought they were fun. I like the giant like anime swords that they would wield around when they didn't have the chainsaws out. So yeah. I'm thinking of any last minute questions, comments, thoughts, opinions on the event. I feel like we kind of covered everything. Be on here for probably another like 5-10 minutes or so, and then I'll probably call it for the night. It's been a really fun stream. Like really fun stream. I love getting back to streaming. It's fun to stream and just talk with you guys about this stuff and get your feedback. I love having the little chats back and forth. And also trying to keep it on topic. I was proud we were able to keep things on topic. Thank you, John. Thank you so much. And I know I haven't been super active on the channel. And I apologize. It's just kind of the nature of haunt season. I just get so busy. And it's like, it's also this time of year, getting close to the holidays and stuff like that. I do have a video coming in the next couple days. I'm still editing it. It's not Horror Nights. It's an actually Epic Universe related. But yeah, that one will be coming soonish. Backstory from potential punk rock icon. I like that one that you said, or maybe it was you or another user, about like a punk rock star from hell. Like, I think that's a really cool. I think that enough is a good backstory, like an interesting backstory. I like the whole like playing with the satanic panic thing of in heavy metal hell, and I think that would be kind of cool to use that as like a not as much like deal with the devil because that's very like pine straw spruce esque, but like yeah, somebody who maybe spins a record the wrong way and ends up having to almost. I like the El Charo backstory, kind of like where he has to make the choice to like steal people's souls, right? I think that's the one they're using in Monstros. I think like that kind of stuff. I think that's honestly a really cool way to do it. Honestly, I think right off the top of my head, that's the first thing I can think of. I'm for one. I'm happy for the icons. Yeah, I like that this is like they're doing new icons, but I do think they will go back to doing like icons that are like tied to previous icons, like how Oddfellow was tied to Jack. Maybe we get another icon that's tied to Jack or tied to Caretaker or tied to Director or whoever. Characters from the lore, obviously, would love to see. We'd love to see Boris. We'd love to see Cindy. I know there's Cindy in here. Would love to see Eddie. Give those characters their years. I think people would love it. Oh shoot, sorry, kick something. I probably take this long question. What would been their house? I'm guessing you're talking about the rock icon. Yeah, I think like a Satanic Panic, make a heavy metal hell house and have it be. Maybe a band. Maybe it could be like a band of 4, and it's like 4 different characters. And then there's the one that like ends up surviving through it all. I don't know. Or if it's a house for Sinister and Surreal. I know you're talking about the twins. Okay. I didn't know because I saw we said Otis. I was like, oh duh. Sinister and Surreal, I think, yeah, going into their dimension and being like witnessing their origin and like their world that they come from, because it's like an alternate reality, an alternate realm. Let's go to that realm. Let's have us go to that realm. They're coming to our realm, but let's go to their realm. And then maybe the thing, the screams collected under Universal, maybe that's like the big finale of like that thing explodes. And then you get to choose your path, kind of like Dueling Dragons, where you get to go through a sinister ending or a surreal ending. And maybe it has some of the same characters we see in the Zone. So it's like, that kind of tie of like, oh, and then you could see the characters in the Zone because they come out and they're broken out into the park. I think that can be kind of cool. Or maybe like the sets can be almost like an upside down, like kind of like what they do with the Upside Down, where it's like an alternate Universal. So like Otis being like part of the facade, or like an alternate hellscape of like a Hollywood Boulevard, or you know what I'm saying, a Central Park, like a dark twisted forest that looks like Central Park kind of wood. I don't know. I think that could be a way they could do something like that and make it like actually tie in. But yeah, I would have loved to see something, even if it was just a podcast. We got a little bit of lore, but not much. Well, I think I'm going to call it. Thank you all for the wonderful stream. Yes, I think Otis will be around. I think he'll be around. I think they'll want to use him in the future. But yeah, thank you for a wonderful stream. I will be doing more streams. More streams will be coming. We'll do a stream all about what we think is coming once the season's over, probably like after the holidays. I want to do a stream talking about what houses we're thinking we're going to come next year. I want to talk about that, but I didn't want to talk about it here because I wanted to focus on 33. But thank you all so much for the stream, for the lovely chat. Y'all rock. And like I said, new video coming soon about Epic Universe's Epic Universe hype list. That's already recorded. It's going to be edited. Working on editing it. So Epic Universe hype list. So we know Epic Universe is opening. We know when it's opening. So it's exciting. So anyways, thank y'all for coming through. And I will, of course, see y'all in the next video. Yeah, peace. Have a good Saturday night. See y'all. Thumbs up. Got to keep the thumbs up. All right.